Lahat, pagbati po at
towards an outlook of inclusive food systems in Asia to 2020. My name is Christina.
ako po si Christina. Ako po ang magiging mangunguna sa teknikal na mga bagay-bagay para sa sesyong ito.
If you require any assistance
Kung kayo po ay nangangailangan ng tulong sa paggamit ng Zoom, maaari lamang po ay bigyan niyo po ako ng mensahe sa pamamagitan ng chat box.
We are going to be conducting today's session in English, but we also have interpretation available.
Magkakaroon po tayo ng mga interpresyon sa lengguaheng Tagalog, Khmer, Bahasa, Tamil, Thai at Vietnamese. Kung nais nyo makinig sa ibang lengguahe, pakiselect na lamang po ang interpretation button sa ibaba ng inyong Zoom screen.
Click that and select the language that you prefer. We will also be using the Q&A box.
Gagamit din po tayo ng Q&A box na nasa baba ng Zoom screen. Kung meron po kayo mga katanungan, pakitype na lang po sa Q&A chat box.
And we'll bring it up in the panel discussion and the Q&A portion of today's event. Lastly, I would like to let everybody know that we will be recording this session, including the interpretation channels.
Ang sesyong po ito ay itatala, ire-record at ilalagay sa website. Pati ang mga interpretasyon. Ipapasa ko na po ngayon ang sesyong ito kay Binibining Femi P.
Thanks, Christina.
Maraming salamat, Christina. Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Masaya po kami nandito kayo kasama namin sa pambungad na sesyon na Linking Wild Foods, Biodiversity and Forest-Based Livelihoods. Ako po si Diana San Jose at ako ang nangunguna sa mga programa ng NTFP-EP. Ginawa namin ang isang langgong talakayan na ito kasama ang Swedish International Agricultural or SIANI, kasama ang Expert Group on Wild Foods, Biodiversity and Livelihoods. Ang grupong ito ay nais pagsamasamahin ang mga matututunan at pwedeng matutunan tungkol sa mga pagkaing ligaw sa Asya. Gusto namin ay mapuksaan natin ang gutom at
just a few notes before we proceed further. Today's session
sa araw na ito ay magiging webinar ang format. So, pero sa dulo naman ay mababati na naman natin ang isa't isa. Kung meron po kayo mga katanungan sa ating mga tagapagsalita, pwede nyo i-type sa Q&A box sa baba ng Zoom control panel. Meron din po tayong chat box para sa mga mahalagang anunsyo at komento. Kung kailangan nyo po ng tulong, pakisabihan lamang po si Christina sa pamamagitan ng chat box. Ipapakilala ko na sa inyo ngayon ang ating moderator para sa sesyong ito na si Binibining Femi Pinto. Si Miss Femi ang ehekutibong direktor ng NTFP-EP Asia at siya rin ang nangunguna sa grupo ng mga pagkaing ligaw. Meron siyang 20 taong karanasan sa pagtatrabaho kasama ang mga katutubo, advokasya at pamamahala ng mga NGO at sa pangunguna ng mga regional tungkol sa mga kabubatan at mga likas yaman. Mayroon po siyang master degree sa International Development and Social Change sa International Policy mula sa Clark University at sa Tufts University ng US. Ang karanasan niya kasama nito ay mga bansa sa kasama ang Palawan, mga Mekong countries,
particularly Northeast and Tonle Sap, Cambodia, Southern Laos, PDR, the Mekong Delta in Vietnam, and north to
at
northeast.
pati na rin ang Thailand. So, Binibining Femi, pinapakilala ko po sa inyo lahat ngayon si Binibining Femi.
Over to you, Ms. Femi.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you for the introduction. Hello to everyone. Welcome again to our virtual forum. It's my huge pleasure to moderate our opening session. where I'm honored to be once again sharing the virtual room with the Wild Foods, Biodiversity and Livelihoods Network Expert Group, and joined by our special guest from SIDA. And of course, so pleased to be having more than 70 other participants joining us, which indicates to me that our theme for this week on wild foods, biodiversity, and livelihoods towards an outlook for inclusive food systems is indeed highly relevant, critical, and if I can push it a bit further, we are also keen to listen and share our views, our insights on what the future of food
Sa
systems
araw po na to ngayon ay makapakinggan natin ang mga iba't ibang opinyon galing sa iba't ibang klase ng tao tungkol sa mga kagubatan at mga katutubo.
From support organizations, us from CSOs, consumers, researchers, policy influencers, policymakers, donors, and academics. And we want to see some clear positive action for the future.
Siyempre, nais namin makakita ng positibong aksyon. Kahapon, kung nandito kayo kasama namin, yung isang kasama ko ay kumanta ng magandang awitin tungkol sa pagsibol. Mahaba pa yung ating tatahakin para mangyari ito. Ngayong pandemya, malaking issue ngayon yung seguridad ng pagkain.
Has been a commitment for dedicated action and change all the way to global level. It's been our commitment and it's been our advocacy.
Talagang advocacy namin ito.
Forests are important and provides intangible and tangible values for people and planet. Any less or more important, any less or more important.
Hindi po porket may pandemya ay hindi na ipapagsawalang bahala na natin ang nangyayari sa seguridad ng pagkain at pagkasira ng ating mga kagubatan.
It's my honor to welcome you all.
Ikinagagalak kong i-welcome at batiin kayong lahat na kasama ngayon. Papakilala ko na kayo ngayon sa ating unang tagapagsalita.
Teddy is currently the president of the ICC.
Si Teddy po ang pangulo ng ICCP. Siya po ay kasapi ng mga tribong. Siya po ang alkalde ng mula 2001 hanggang 2004 at 2007 hanggang 2010. Naging kongresista po siya sa distrito ng Ifugao at ang pinangunahan niya ang mga katutubo ng mga Pilipinas. Nakapagsalita na po siya sa mga iba't ibang komperensya sa mga ICCA teritoryo ng ICCA para sa konserbasyon, kultura at mga karapatang pagtao.
Dedicated to promoting the appropriate recognition and support for Indigenous peoples and local community conserved territories and areas. I welcome Teddy to the floor, to the spotlight. Teddy?
I actually just received a message from him that he's trying to connect, so he will be in shortly.
Maari lamang po maghintay dahil sinusubukan pa kumonekta ng ating tagapagsalitang si Ted. Hintayin lang natin po muna siya.
And he was cautioning that there might be a problem with his
mukhang may konti po siyang problema sa kanyang signal sa internet.
Keynote talk. We will launch into a lightning talk. And
siguro po ay didiretso po muna tayo sa susunod na mabilisang presentasyon.
Will be kicked off with the keynote remarks and then followed by followed by lightning talks. Lightning talks are short, brief key messages that we are inviting our speakers for today to provide, around 3 to 5 minutes, and it will speak to 3 questions from our expert group members. And these questions are: what's your outlook for food systems towards 2030?
So paano po natin tatanawin ang mga sistema ng pagkain sa taong 2030?
How has it been in terms of your experience being part of the expert group? And
kamusta naman po ang inyong mga naging karanasan bilang parte ng expert group na ito?
Or maybe even from your past experience, from your current experience. What are your key messages to share to this.
Ano yung mga gusto nyo iparating na mensahe sa sesyong ito? Ano po ang papel ng proyektong ito para maging mas makatotohanan ito?
Maybe Diana, if Teddy is back, then just
He's back.
Okay.
Narito na po si Ginoong Teddy.
You're on. Hi.
Mute.
Oh, you're muted.
Hi, I'm very sorry. It seems like Teddy might have joined with an interpreter link, but that's all right. If everyone could go into the English channel in the
Okay.
Can you try?
Maari lamang po para marinig ang ating tagapagsanilita ay pumunta na po kayo ngayon sa English channel ng Zoom na ito.
Perfect. All right. So if everybody, all the attendees could kindly go into the English channel in the interpretation, we will be hearing from Mr. Teddy.
Maari lamang pong pumasok na sa English channel ng Zoom call na ito.
Go ahead.
Yes, hear you.
Wait, English channel.
Mm.
Sa totoo lang po ay naging matagumpay kami sa pagkuha ng mga kliyente na gustong kumuha ng mga produkto namin mula sa mga komunidad. Sa totoo lang po, napakasikat ng produkto na hinahanap nila at ito po ay ang fern. Oh my God, I forgot. Pako. Yun, pako. Buti na lang pareho ang fern sa Malaysia at Tagalog. Pako. So nahanap namin ng pako doon sa lugar kung saan kami naglalakad. Ito pala ay pagkaing ligaw. Eh yun nga lang, hindi namin mahanap at hindi rin namin mabenta ito kasi wala pong gumagawa nito sa mga sakahan. Natatagpuan po sila sa mga kagubatan. Mute. So kamakailan lamang ay merong artikulong lumabas sa dyaryo sa Pilipinas tungkol sa pulot na ginagawa sa isang ICCA na komunidad. At nung lumabas ang artikulong ito, ang dami naming nakuhang mensahe na nagtatanong, saan ba mabibili tong pulot na to? So, ang ginawa ng komunidad ay nilagay ito sa pakete at talagang puro itong pulot na to kumpara dun sa mga binebentang pulot sa mga tindahan sa syudad. Kaya sa tingin ko ay ito ay pwedeng maging isang klase ng pagkaing ligaw na ginagawa ng mga katutubo natin. Maraming salamat po sa pag promote ng ating mga produkto ko, Congressman Ted. Yung pulot talaga na galing sa mga ICCA communities ay talagang purong-puro. So ang ginawa namin, nakatulong na kami sa mga komunidad para maprotektahan ng kalikasan. Nakatulong pa kami sa kanila para maipagbili at maibenta ang kanilang mga produkto sa mga syudad. So, mula sa paglalakbay, sa pagkuha ng mga kliyente, sa pagbebenta online, pati sa sa code of ethics. Kung ating bibigyan ng kapangyarihan ang mga ICCA na magtayo ng sarili nilang negosyo, para na rin tayong gumagawa ng paaralan para sa kanila. Para sa mga napipiling lugar. Sana po ay makatulong ang talakayang ito sa gusto nating matupad ng mga layunin. Meron pong katanungan dito mula sa isa natin sa mga bisita. Tinatanong po niya kung paano nakakatulong. Okay. Okay. Nung nangyari yung pandemya, talagang naging hadlang ito sa seguridad ng pagkain. So, dahil sa pandemya yung nangyari, ang dami-daming bansa maraming bansa na napagtanto nilang kailangan nila talaga na mapalakas pa yung seguridad ng pagkain para sa mga tao. Kaya ngayon, ang mga tao ay talagang na-discover nila na meron palang mga pagkain ligaw at ito'y kanilang ginagamit na kasi ito ay mas masustansya, ito ay mas masarap at ito ay madali nating makukuha kahit kailan natin gusto. Maraming salamat, Congressman Ted. Talagang nasabik kami na ibahagi ang aming mga
Thank you very much, Ted,
aralin.
for that very good kickstart for our opening session and for the first.
Maraming salamat po, Congressman Teddy.
But before I continue, maybe I would just check if our interpretation has been fixed, because I also heard some kind of cross line with interpretations being heard live. So Christina or Courtney?
Thank you, Femi. Yes, so Diana has kindly provided a closed caption of the talk by Mr. Teddy into the chat box. And so if everyone could kindly go back to the respective interpretation panels, we should be proceeding as per normal.
Okay, so sorry about that, but thank you again, Teddy, for that. He went straight into telling the story, an actual story in the Philippines of resilience of indigenous communities faced with a crisis, with a pandemic. They took it upon themselves to take action, and this example of self-reliance, food resilience, and also taking that up a notch by also highlighting how this could be a kind of a mindset, a new mindset that could be taken into an outlook for a future of food systems, that it has to be inclusive of traditional systems. It should also reach all the way to indigenous communities, and also having them taking part with this ingenuity, with this creativity, and even having a new fair trade alliance that has just been set up. So congratulations with that. And thank you again. I know that these kinds of issues is just a kickstart, and there will be a few more examples that we will hear, not just today.
Meron pa tayo mga mapapakinggan na iba pang halimbawa mula sa ating mga ibang tagapagsalita. So, dadako na tayo sa susunod na mabilisang pananalita at presentasyon.
From our first panel of lightning speakers. The next that I would call to the spot.
Ang susunod po dating tatawagin ay si Dr. Prasert
of the Pagakanyao Association for Sustainable Development. Dr. Prasert is a specialist of indigenous studies.
Si Dr. Prasert ay isang dalubhasa ng Indigenous study or aral ng mga katutubong aralin sa Thailand. Siya po ay isang dalubhasa sa sociology at meron siyang dalubhasa po siya na nailalagay niya sa akademya, at siya po ang nangunguna sa Intermountain Education and Culture in Thailand Association at direktor ng IMPEC. Siya rin po ang nangunguna sa tinatawag po natin si Dr. Prasert. Salamat po. Maraming salamat po, Binibining Femi.
I will make use of the Thai interpreter. So some part in Thai and the interpreter can help. It's a good day and good
Magandang
news
araw po.
on the topics of the white food. I like to start with the
Magsisimula po ako
elders talk about the forest, the livelihoods.
tungkol sa mga kagubatan at sa mga kabuhayan.
Words. Sometimes they sing, but I just talk. Means that our ancestors live in evergreen forests. Our elders live in evergreen forests. They create knowledge and practice to support the livelihoods that harmony with nature. When they are gone,
Kapag nawala ang ating mga kagubatan, mawawala rin ang kaalaman. Itong kaalaman na to,
the forest become poison, and the people
malalason ang ating mga kagubatan. At malalason din ang ating mga pagkain.
Now maybe I try to speak in Thai for our Thai translator for me. ได้เลยใช่ไหมครับได้ยินนะครับครับในพื้นที่ป่าที่มีความร่ำรวยทางด้านความหลากหลายทางชีวภาพประมาณ 80% เนี่ยถูกพิสูจน์ว่าเป็นพื้นที่ของกลุ่มชนเผ่าพื้นเมืองได้ตั้งรกรากอยู่ยาวนานอันนี้ผมได้ยินครูแปลด้วยแปลทีละตอนหรือเปล่าหรือว่ายังไงแปลไปเลยพูดไปเลยเนาะโอเคในสถานการณ์ลักษณะแบบนี้เป็นเพราะชุมชนชนเผ่าพื้นเมืองและชุมชนท้องถิ่นมีองค์ความรู้ภูมิปัญญาที่สืบทอดมายาวนานกับการใช้ชีวิตอยู่กับป่าเพื่อเร็วขึ้นผมพูดภาษาอังกฤษแล้วบอกนะ It's a bit quicker. I think I will speak in English. I just mentioned that.
Medyo nahihirapan po sa English.
Is the area indigenous people, and this means that they already proved that indigenous people have a rich knowledge and practice.
Ang mga katutubo talaga natin ang may pinakamayamang kaalaman pagdating sa ating mga kagubatan. So ang iniisip ko, yung sitwasyon na meron tayo ngayon.
Link to the I heard the translate, so I don't know that some problem. Under this process, in the reality, the area now, I think that knowledge of it start erosion, and and young people start not continue this kind of knowledge. At the same time, in the indigenous people area become many problems of the continue this kind of livelihoods. And in the same
Mahirap talaga ipagpatuloy ang ganitong klaseng kabuhayan.
Interpreter, I think that I have problem with the sound.
Nagkakaroon po yata tayo ng problema sa interpreter, sa Thai.
Christina, can we?
Yes, if you could just carry on, Dr. Pressert, we will be speaking with the interpreter to sort this out.
It is fine now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, since the situation in the
Yung
meantime,
sitwasyon na mayroon tayo ngayon, ay talaga nagtulok sa atin para subukang dahil nga meron tayo, nasa gitna tayo ng isang pandemya,
something happened like the local indigenous people community.
apektado talaga baging ang mga katutubo natin.
Yes, I'm trying to find where the cross sound is coming from, but we can still hear you.
Okay, I will turn in time because maybe translate. We have a problem. สถานการณ์เรื่องของวิถีชีวิตนะที่เคยใช้ฐานทางวัฒนธรรมทางองค์ความรู้นะตามที่สืบทอดกันเริ่มเสื่อมลงเพราะว่ามีทั้งระบบการศึกษาและมีทั้งระบบการศึกษาแบบใหม่นะที่อะไรทำให้เราไม่มีโอกาสได้เรียนรู้ด้านนี้และขณะเดียวกันเนี่ยเรื่องของการปฏิบัติการโดยเฉพาะเศรษฐกิจนะเริ่มมีการเกษตรแบบกระแสหลักที่เข้ามาและสิ่งเหล่านี้ทำให้วิถีมาเปลี่ยนและองค์ความรู้ต่างๆเนี่ยเริ่มสูญถอยโดยเฉพาะการใช้ประโยชน์จากป่าการใช้อาหารจากป่าเนี่ยกลายเป็นปัญหาเมื่อไหร่ที่เมื่อประกาศเป็นเขตป่าอนุรักษ์ทำให้ไม่สามารถเข้าถึงสิ่งเหล่านั้นได้เพราะว่ากฎหมายห้ามมิให้เข้าไปไม่ให้ไปแตะต้องอันนี้ก็เป็นประเด็นหนึ่งที่เป็นปัญหาอันนี้ทางและได้ยินใช่ไหมครับฮัลโหล
Dr. Purser, is it possible to switch to English for now?
Okay.
For the last part of what you spoke about?
Yeah. But when I use English, another language interpreter coming. So
yes, I understand.
But however, I will try. Yes.
Thank you. Sorry for that interruption.
Okay. ทีนี้ประเด็นก็คือว่าเมื่อสถานการณ์ when the situation of COVID-19 many things still prove that our local food, our wild food still exists in our area, and most of the indigenous communities they still survive from that area instead of to use material from outside. So this already proved that the self-reliance local product wild food, it is very important for them.
Mahalaga talaga ang ligaw na pagkain para sa mga katutubong ito. Kaya sinisikap ko pong makagawa ng programa para makatulong sa kanila.
To think about how to improve.
Paano natin mapapaganda pa lalo?
I think that the why food, it is still new and still need a lot of
Medyo bago pa itong pagkaing ligaw na ito.
to do and come out with support for academics area.
Kailangan pa nito ng mas matinding, mas karagdagang suporta.
People alone, they practice, they use, but it's not recognized, and many times they have problem with the laws and
Yung mga tao minsan nakakaranas ng problema, hindi naman nila agad makikilala yung mga pagkaing ligaw na yan. So ang magandang gawin ay gumamit ng pagkaing ligaw at gamitin ng tama ang kaalaman tungkol dito. Kailangan talagang ipaalam natin sa komunidad kung paano mas maiging magagamit ang mga pagkaing ligaw na ito. So talagang kailangan makausap ang mga gumagawa ng mga polisiya at batas. Importante yung kampanya tungkol sa impormasyon tungkol sa ligaw na pagkain. Kailangan ay So ang kaalaman ng mga katutubo
than just knowledge.
Importante, mahalaga.
But we need to reinterpret it to fit to the new context of the new society.
Kailangan ay ma-connecta natin ito sa konteksto ng lipunan na meron tayo ngayon. At ma-connecta natin to sa sitwasyong meron tayo ngayon, ang COVID-19 na pandemya.
So, as we talk about that in the past, traditional practice already based on self-reliance, strong, solid, what we call people can survive from that. But when it change, it depends on outside and mainstream economic. But now it's challenged to go back to our traditional practice.
Kailangan po talaga ay bumalik tayo sa mga tradisyonal na gawain.
For the future,
para sa hinaharap,
something like we need a lot of work to.
Kailangan marami tayong gawin.
Especially in the local level, it needs to create a lot of. Like already mentioned, a good practice, and at the same time, the people on this station need to stronger to do this process, and also challenge to strengthen local people. Even
kailangan mapalakas pa natin ang mga lokal na tao, ang mga katutubo. At kailangan mapaalam natin sa gobyerno
that it is one of the good what we call solution for people.
Na maganda itong solusyon para magkaroon pa rin ng harmonya, magandang relasyon ang tao sa kalikasan.
In the national level, I think very important that the government need to recognize, need to understand.
Kailangan talaga maintindihan ng ating gobyerno ang mga tungkol sa bagay na ito. Kailangan ay malaman nila na dapat yung kalikasan magagamit natin sa isang likas kayang paraan. Kailangan yung mga kagubatan ng kalikasan natin ay maganda at maayos ang pamamahala sa mga ito.
But still, I think there's have a gap between the understand or recognition by policymaker.
Kailangan talaga maintindihan ito ng mga gumagawa ng mga batas.
Because they based on their traditional way of life, especially the rotation farming practice, not recognized by the national park. So that's still a lot of challenge in this process.
Marami pa rin humahad lang dito.
International level, especially regional level, the ASEAN, also government in Asia, that already have a network now to
Ang mga
trees.
gobyerno naman sa Asia ay kasalukuyang gumagawa na ng iba't ibang paraan para makapag-usap at mas maintindihan nila ang mga katutubo at mga lokal na komunidad.
That it is a challenge, but however, it is some policies start what we call start open, start what we call better now, especially in the international level.
Sa level na international.
But I think time is up. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm very sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
If you would like to just wrap up with a couple of lines very quickly, we'll pass on to the next speaker next.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Naubusan po tayo ng oras. Pasensya na po.
Thank you, Dr. Prasert.
Maraming salamat po, Dr. Prasert. At paumanhin po na kailangan namin kayong patigilin at nagkaroon tayo ng konting problema sa teknolohiya.
So we continue to hear translation over the English. So I hope that our technical host can resolve that. But thank you indeed very much, Dr. Prasert. I will move on to the next speaker.
Ipapakilala ko na po ang susunod na tagapagsalita.
Dr. Prasert's views, particularly related to recognition of
So talagang gustong sabihin ni Dr. Prasert ay dapat kilalanin natin ang mga katutubo pa dahil sila ang mas nakakaalam tungkol sa mga kagubatan natin, kalikasan at ligaw na pagkain.
Of Indigenous knowledge, but it's very clear his position about the abilities also of Indigenous peoples to be self-reliant, and also how this time in the pandemic, there's also a revival going back, as Teddy had also recounted about.
Kayang-kaya naman ng mga katutubong mabuhay ng sarili nila kahit sa gitna ng isang pandemya. Si Manay ay isa pong katutubong bunong mula sa Mondulkiri sa northeast ng Cambodia. Siya po ay nagtapos sa Royal University of Law at ang posisyon niya ay chairman of the board at board member ng Organization of Promote Khoi Culture. Siya rin po ay nagtrabaho sa United Nations Development Program at nagtrabaho sa Regional Indigenous People Program at nagtrabaho din sa International Labor Organization in its support to Indigenous Peoples Project at naging parte rin po siya ng mga katutubo.
Thank you, Femi.
Maraming salamat po.
Good afternoon to everyone.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
I'd like to thank you to NTFP-EP.
Gusto ko lang po magpasalamat sa NTFP-EP para sa oportunidad na ito.
In related to the wild food, biodiversity, as well as the livelihood.
Ang pag-uusapan ko po ngayon ay tungkol sa kalikasan.
Community based. So this is very
Ito po ay
attention topic that
mahalaga po ang pag-uusapan natin ngayon.
Pay attention.
Kaya sana po ay makinig kayong lahat kasi
this is very much linked to the sustainable development. In the
may kinalaman po ang aking pag-uusapan sa pangmatagalang
the inclusion of the framework related to the wild foods, biodiversity, as well.
May kinalaman po ang pag-uusapan ngayon sa pagkaing ligaw, sa kalikasan at sa mga kabuhayan. Sa aking bansang Cambodia, meron actually kaming sinusundang balangkas.
Between the government that we can find in the protected area, we can find it in the forested law, and the other legal framework that recognize the wild food in order for sustainable development. However, you know this framework or system.
Itong balangkas o sistema na ito, medyo mas theoretical kasi siya at nakasulat kasi siya sa papel. Kaya medyo hadlang pa rin ito para mas maintindihan pa ito lalo.
It have been affected very much by the individual and also from the economic land concession, where the government have been granted to those individual and also to the company, and then they have been destroyed all those natural resources. So the wild foods and the biodiversity, it's gone. So for me and for the other, we think that the most important in
Ang
order
pinakamahalaga dito para masiguro natin ang seguridad ng kalikasan
biodiversity or the wild food, the first
at
thing
pagkaing ligaw, ang kailangan nating unahin ay ang seguridad ng lupain at mga likas yaman. Base sa mga tradisyonal na kaalaman galing sa mga katutubo. At magbabase po tayo doon sa legal na balangkas.
Then the wild food, the biodiversity, also under the threat, under the insecurity. So
Delikado po talaga ang ngayon ang ating makalikasan. Base sa aking karanasan, ako ay sumasang-ayon kay Dr. Prasert na kailangan ikikilalin natin ang kaalaman galing sa ating mga katutubo. Dahil iyon ay mahalaga. Kaya para mas mapatagal pa natin itong ating kalikasan.
All the development partner, pay more attention on this, how we can ensure
Kailangan
that
talaga mas pagtuunan natin ito ng pansin. Itong mga pagkain ligaw ito at ang kalikasan.
contribute
Dahil ito, mahalaga ito at dahil ito ay nakakatulong sa atin.
also the climate change adaptation and
At
also
kailangan
the livelihood. In the context of Cambodia, indigenous people, we does not want anything
Ang mga katutubo sa Cambodia,
from the
ang gusto lang naman nila ay
example during the
mapangalagaan ang kanilang mga kagubatan at
in
sakahan
April,
at kanilang mga
the
lupain.
government Cambodian has locked down the country, and most of the markets
Ngayon sa Cambodia, kasalukuyan ay naka-lockdown ang buong bansa.
really access to buy any food.
Kaya mahirap bumili ng pagkain. Pero ang mga katutubo, hindi naman nila kailangan bumili talaga. Meron pa rin po silang pagkain. At di po nila kailangan mag-alala. Dahil yung lupain nila ay may seguridad. Pumunta lang sila sa ilog, makakuha sila ng pagkain doon. Punta sila kagubatan, makakakuha rin sila ng pagkain doon. Kaya, yung mga taong nakatira sa syudad, sila pa yung mas nag-aalala. Kasi hindi sila makabili ng pagkain nila. Hirap po sila makabili. Di kagaya ng mga katutubo ay madali po nilang makukuha ang mga kailangan nila mula sa mga likas yaman at kanilang mga kagubatan.
So this is my remark note in related to this topic. And everyone recognize that the wild food,
Kailangan talagang malaman natin na importante at mahalaga ang pagkaing ligaw at ang ating kalikasan sa ating buhay. Kailangan nating malaman din kung paano ang halaga nito sa ating buhay. Paano ito makakatulong sa seguridad natin sa pagkain. Para ma-resolve natin ang mga problemang kaugnay dito.
In the objective of sustainable development. So for me, I'm very much concerned.
Para sa akin, ako talaga ay nag-aalala.
So the government has, created sustainable development goal, especially for the
Para sa aming gobyerno.
so on, but in the reality, at the ground level,
Gumawa nga sila ng mga balangkas at batas pero parang
increasing this problem. So
hindi naman ito talagang na isasagawa.
sustainable our lives for the long term, I would suggest that we all,
Kaya ang nais kong iparating, dapat mas
secure the land and natural resource. Yeah.
paano natin mapapanatiling ang seguridad ng ating mga likas yaman at lupain. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Manay. I will immediately just move on to call our next speaker.
Ipapakilala ko na po ngayon ang susunod na tagapagsalita.
This is the country coordinator for
Siya po
NTFP-EP India. He has
Siya po ang may kinalaman sa pagkain ligaw sa Asia tungkol sa mga tradisyonal na pagkain. So, ang kanilang inaaral din po niya ang nutrisyon, kalusugan, mga katutubo, at siya po ay nagsulat ng mga ilang publication tungkol sa mga kagubatan at ligaw na pagkain.
You're still muted.
You're muted, Madhu.
Yes, there you go.
Got it. Yeah. Hello, everybody. And I'll try and stick to the 3 points outlined by Femi.
Ipapakilala ko po ang 3 puntos
The outlook I have,
sa pagtanaw,
the message,
sa aking pagtanaw sa mensahe, kung anong mensahe ang bibigay
the
ko,
role of the network.
at ang papel ng network.
3 minutes. My outlook is positive, though the only danger is the
Sa
hype.
tingin ko, positibo naman ang aking nakikita.
Everybody jumps into it and it can be hyped up and lead to nothing. The indigenous food systems and the practice of it is
Mga
one of the
katutubong sistema ng pagkain ay talagang magandang mga paraan para makilala pa ang ating mga kagubatan.
more and more people are losing touch with forests.
Kasi marami na sa atin ay
There is a
hindi na pamilyar sa ating mga kagubatan talaga.
botany or other practices, but food and food gathering
Pero yung pagkain,
wonderful way.
magandang pamamaraan yan para mas makilala natin ang ating mga kagubatan.
So I think it is a very rich and diverse
Sa
offer.
tingin ko ay talagang mayaman ang ating mga kagubatan
Productive ways of getting to know a forest. So
at maganda talagang pagkilala ito sa ating mga
this is a
kagubatan.
topic as we have
Kaya
been
ito ay isang paksa na gusto kong pag-usapan.
and it will continue to be so. My message is that
Ang mensahe ko para sa lahat ay para sa lahat
environment as a whole
na lahat ng kasali sa
at some level
kaya dapat ay makialam tayong lahat sa mga issue na ito.
like understanding a kitchen garden,
Kailangan mas maintindihan na natin yung sa kusina, sa pagsasaka, sa pagkuha ng mga pagkain ligaw.
constantly update one's knowledge. Because
Kailangan po
I
ay
think
maging
techniques,
pakialamero tayo. Makialam po tayo sa mga kaalaman,
new
sa mga balita,
you know, the
kung paano ilutuin ang mga pagkain ligaw na ito.
listation of knowledge is very, very important and not get stuck.
Kailangan talaga ay
And
mas
the other
aralin pa natin ang mga
the
ito.
rural and indigenous youth involved in our work.
Kailangan ay isama natin ang kabataan
They have and what
dito.
they have offered us. And it is not for us to take alone. It is to offer back. And that brings me to
Kailangan ay makapagbigay tayo. Kaya dapat isama natin ang ating mga kabataan.
ultimately the role of the network would be to
So
restore
ang papel ng network na ito ay
this tradition
maibalik ang kaalaman na ito
back to the people.
para
To the community.
pabalik sa mga tao.
Not for an academic paper, not for
Hindi po ito para sa pananaliksik.
but to give
Ito
it
po ay
back
para sa mga tao.
and see how we can restore, rejuvenate
Para mas
traditions
mapanatili natin ang ating mga tradisyon
their own worth back to them.
at para mas maintindihan ng mga tao ang kanilang halaga.
For indigenous peoples and these communities to see how these traditions can be passed on. At the moment,
Ang mga
we are-
tradisyong ito pwedeng pagpasa-pasahan ng mga iba't ibang henerasyon.
I kept saying tenure is so important and we need to work on this tenure and create
Kailangan nating pagtrabahuhan pa ang
traditions
salitang
to be
ito na
passed on,
tenure or
keeping in mind that our role
at ang mga tradisyong ito.
back to the people. And so the additional role will be to facilitate such
So dapat pangunahan natin ang mga oportunidad
in such knowledge being passed on and
Oportunidad
passed on
at
between indigenous communities.
para mas
And the final
malaman pa
will
natin
be
ang
to see
tungkol
that
sa
all
kaalaman,
diversions today,
tungkol sa
all
kalikasan.
obstructions to tenure security needs to be highlighted with wild food in.
Kailangan natin talaga bigyang halaga ang mga pagkain ligaw.
Nobody is protesting because wild food is going. People are protesting because some forest is going. It's a more diluted way of protest. But
Opo, hindi lang po dapat tayo
diversions should be seen with wild food
Hindi po tayo dapat magprotesta dahil lang sa kagubatan, kundi dahil na rin sa pagkawala ng pagkaing ligaw. Maraming salamat po.
I'll move on as we have run out.
Pakilala ko na po.
I'll move on to Nonet.
Ang susunod na tagapagsalita si Nonet.
Director of the tenure facility. Happy for her to be here. Nonet is a lawyer practitioner.
Siya po ay isang abogado at specialist sa mga katutubo, likas yaman at karapatang panglupa. Nagtrabaho po siya sa Indonesia, Philippines, Southeast Asia at Pacific regions.
She has set up several NGOs focused on defending and strengthening
Siya
Indigenous
po ay
women's legal rights and has helped design and implement funding portfolios for local communities and Indigenous peoples. Nanette?
To unmute myself. You can hear me, yeah?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat po.
To be here and,
Masaya po ako na nandito ako ngayon. Magandang hapon po.
Good day to everyone. I will be very brief. I'll have a timer so that
Bibilisan ko lang po ang aking presentasyon.
Really more than ever before now, with the uncertainties brought about by the disaster, the pandemic, especially wild
Dahil
foods,
nga merong pandemya ay
these two ways that I've seen from our partners. One is to be cared for, propagate, and conserve. Especially the food
nagkaroon tayo ng problema pagdating sa konserbasyon ng mga sistema ng pagkain.
Respect more the environment and the integrity of
At kailangan mas magbigyan natin ng respeto ang ating mga kabubatan at kapaligiran.
buffer for forest and neighboring communities to really survive.
Ang pagkaing ligaw talaga ang dahilan kung bakit mas nakakatagal at nabubuhay ang mga katutubo sa mga lokal na komunidad.
Medicines, natural food,
Kaya dito kasi nanggagaling yung mga medisina at mga pagkain.
Was a strong, what I've seen and what's been described here, was a strong community network for food, and it's proving to be faster, more efficient than the government response. And in some indigenous and locally organized communities, it has been
Mas mabilis talaga ang mga ginagawa ng NGO na ito kadalasan kumpara sa ginagawa ng ating gobyerno.
the need to buffer and expand the forest, meaning
Kailangan talaga ay palawakin pa natin ang mga kagubatan. Palawakin pa natin ang mga
understanding and the great experience and statements of indigenous peoples and local communities that we have talked to, that the territories with secure tenure are able to cope better with the uncertainties. And
kaya yung mga mas napayamang lupain, sila yung mas nakakapag-adjust, yung mas nakakatagal sa nangyayari sa atin ngayon. So kailangan talaga ay patuloy nating bigyan ng respeto ang ating kalikasan. Dahil ang kalikasan ay kailangan nating siguruhin ang mga teritoryo. Kailangan talaga may mga batas na pinagpoprotekta sa mga lupaing ito.
To engage joint community land use planning, mapping, conflict-free processes offered to
Kailangan gawa natin ng mapa.
Community boundaries, common boundaries to avoid conflict or to resolve that existing conflict, registering the organizations and community territorial maps in governments at all levels, set up institutional organizational systems and structures for governance of territory, nurture the values of reciprocity and codependence. These are all known to all of our speakers, respect and honoring of co-beings and community.
Kailangan talaga pangalagaan at respetuhin lahat ng gawa ng poong may kapal. Kaya ang aming vision ay
for the present and for the next generations. So that is really where I'll stop. The indigenous peoples just last. And local communities for the network, they are the network. So they
ang mga katutubo po ang tinatawag na network. Sila po, ang mga katutubo po dapat ang ating mga partner or kasama, kasosyo, pagdating sa pagkaing ligaw. Dahil sila ang dapat talaga ay pangalagaan at protektahin natin ang mga likas yaman.
And the guardians of the forest need that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That actually is a very good it encapsulates the message for this
Maganda
first.
po ang inyong naging mensahe.
Thank you for that.
Maraming salamat po
Pointed message as well.
doon sa inyong napakagandang mensahe. So dadako na po tayo sa pangalawang parte ng ating programa.
This second portion of our opening session will be kicked off by our keynote.
So magkakaroon po tayo ng mga tagapagsalita, si S. Nielsen,
for Agriculture and Food Security at SIDA Policy Support Unit since 2018.
So
She has worked
siya po ay nagtrabaho sa SIDA mula 2005 bilang tagapayo sa kahirapan at naging tagapamahala ng programa sa tungkol sa tubig sa Middle East region. Meron po siyang MA sa Rural Social Development mula sa University of Reading, UK at nagtrabaho ng maraming taon. Siya po ay may
economic history with a focus on global food systems. I welcome S. Nielsen.
Binabati ko po si S. Nielsen.
Well, thank you so much.
Maraming salamat po.
Be here with you today.
Masaya ako na nandito ako ngayon.
So, dear colleagues and friends, a very good morning and afternoon.
Magandang umaga at hapon sa inyong lahat. Masaya ako na nandito ako ngayon para makapagbahagi sa inyo ng aking mga nalalaman tungkol sa pagkaing ligaw.
And I sincerely hope that my words will add a little to the vast gathering of expertise.
Sana po ay may matutunan kayo mula sa akin.
Such rich and interesting program. I'm certainly hoping to participate in most of the sessions.
Sana po ay makadalo rin ako sa ibang mga sesyon para ako ay makahabol at matuto tungkol sa ligaw na pagkain.
And the policy environment rather than directly engaged in catching and collecting my own wild food. But let me start there anyway.
Magsisimula po ako ngayon sa aking karanasan sa ligaw na pagkain. Lumaki po ako sa isang maliit na sakahan sa Sweden kasama ang mga hayop at halaman. Gaya ng ibang tao, ako po ay namumulot ng mga berries at iba pang mga prutas at bulaklak kasama ang aking pamilya. At kumakain kami ng mga jam gawa sa mga prutas na ito. Sa Sweden, maraming pamilya ang namumulot din, nangunguha ng mga kabute at mga ligaw na hayop kagaya ng usa. Yung lolo ko, dati nangingisda siya at nanghuhuli ng mga iba't ibang klaseng isda. Minsan binibisita ko siya. Hindi ko talaga masyadong nagustuhan ang buhay ng aking lolo. Pero binibigyan ko pa rin ng halaga ang mga taong nangunguha ng sarili nilang ligaw na pagkain. Sa Sweden, meron po kaming pwede kami pumunta sa gubat at kunin namin kung ano mang gusto namin. Pero syempre, kailangan may paalam paminsan-minsan. Tungkol sa pagkaing ligaw, hindi ako sigurado kung ano talaga yung definisyon ng ligaw na pagkain. Siguro mas marami pang definisyon ang pagkaing ligaw. Meron kung ating aalamin kung ano ibig sabihin ng ligaw na pagkain, lahat ng pagkain ay galing sa ligaw, galing sa kagubatan, galing sa kalikasan. Kailangan talaga maprotektahan natin to. Ito talaga dapat ang pinakamahalaga nating maalala tungkol sa ating kalikasan. Lahat tayo may karapatan sa pagkain.
Part of the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, it was stated that the right to food should be understood as the availability.
Kailangan natin maintindihan na ang karapatang pagkain ay ang pagkain pwedeng makuha ng kahit sino, kahit saan, kahit kailan, at kailangan masustansya ito at ito ay hindi nakakalason.
In 2012, the committee
Noong 2012,
endorsed the voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance
gumawa ng mga
and
patakaran
forests
tungkol sa pagkuha ng ligaw na pagkain.
It comes with legal obligations of the state to respect.
May mga iba't iba talagang obligasyon na may kinalaman sa seguridad ng pagkain.
Therefore, there is a strong case for the recognition and the celebration also of wild foods.
So, kailangan talaga natin pahalagaan ang mga ligaw na pagkain ito dahil may kinalaman ito sa seguridad ng pagkain.
Indeed, this is also echoed in the Sustainable Development Goal of Zero Hunger, where one of the targets for 2030 directly speaks to the increase
Sa taong 2030,
and income of small
kailangan mas
producers,
makapaggawa pa tayo ng mas maraming pagkain para sa mga katutubo,
pastoralists, and
para sa mga magsasaka, mga mangingisda, para mas magkaroon sila ng seguridad pagdating sa kaalaman.
I share with you that there is a lot of knowledge, indigenous and local.
Marami namang kaalamang mayroon sa mga katutubo at sa tungkol sa ligaw na pagkain.
That we have to value more and make better known.
Kailangan natin pahalagahan pa ang mga ito.
Exactly one of the reasons why this network was formed.
Ito ay isa sa mga dahilan kung bakit ginawa ang network na ito.
In Sweden, we have had for nearly
Sa Sweden,
the policy for global development.
meron kaming mga polisiyang sinusundan.
Ease the collaboration across government departments above all. Something that is much more difficult than it sounds like.
Medyo mahirap ito, pero kailangan. Sa SIDA, kailangan ang gusto naming marating ay mabawasan ang kahirapan sa mundo. Yung mga kawawa, binibigyan namin ng halaga.
Gender equality, environment and climate change, as well as conflict. As from this year, we have been instructed by the Swedish government to also integrate biodiversity with
Kailangan din isama natin ang usapin tungkol sa kalikasan pagdating sa ligaw na pagkain.
with rigorous assessment procedures, engaged collaboration, capacity development, and inclusive dialogues with partners. We are funding initiatives for better lives and livelihoods in many parts of the world.
Gusto talaga naming mas bigyang pansin ang iba't ibang kabuhayan.
Food Expert Group makes me proud to work at SIDA and convinced that
Kaya ako nagtatrabaho sa SIDA.
SIDA also supports other initiatives.
Sinusuportahan din namin ang ibang mga inisyatibo tulad ng
Like to mention a few. We support the Indigenous Peoples Assistance Facility, EPAF, which is housed
EPAF.
in EPAF, which received a major grant at the end of last year when we were given extra funds by the government.
Binigyan naman kami ng tulong ng ibang mga organisasyon.
Here today are eligible for funds from this facility.
So baka yung mga ibang may organisasyon dito ay makahingi rin ng tulong sa kanila.
We fund Recroft, which is part of our regional cooperation strategy of Asia. And we support the tenure facility under the Rights and Resources Initiative. Within SIDA, we have recently formed an internal committee on food systems.
Gumawa rin po kami sa SIDA ng isang komite
And we have started an evaluation of selected SIDA portfolios.
at tinitignan na namin ngayon ang mga iba't ibang portfolio tungkol sa seguridad ng pagkain.
In the EU and in many UN organizations. We are engaged in the forthcoming Food Systems Summit, which we also
Kasama rin po kami sa Food System Summit
we have asked SIANI here to help us arrange
at tinanong rin namin ang SIANI kung pwede nila kaming tulungan.
inclusion for international partners in the Swedish National Dialogue, feeding into the Global Food System Summit later on this year. So dear friends, I could continue to
Mga kaibigan, gusto ko pa sana magsalita pero
but I honestly think that what you will say is
sa tingin ko naman ay kung ano yung sasabihin nyo mas importante kaysa sa sasabihin ko. Kaya magpapasalamat na po ako ngayon sa pakikinig sa akin.
Again, thank you for organizing this week's round
Maraming salamat po.
wild foods, biodiversity, and livelihoods. And thank you for inviting SIDA and me.
Maraming salamat po sa pag-imbita sa SIDA at sa akin.
Exchanges throughout the week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ese. sometimes it feels quite removed to know how organizations like SIDA are thinking, and what kind of perspective you have when it comes down to very local issues. And so we are really grateful for the
Kami po
support
ay nagpapasalamat sa suporta binigay niyo sa amin
to this network.
para sa network na ito.
The alliance will continue even beyond
Sana po ay magpatuloy pa ito.
1-year project that we have under the initiative. So thank you very much.
Maraming salamat
And
po.
thank you also for the personal stories of
Maraming salamat din po sa personal na karanasan.
Our next slide.
Iimbitahin ko na po ang susunod na tagapagsalita.
And I was asked to remind that I hope that it's not too disruptive, but there will be chimes at the 3rd minute. You will have maximum 5 minutes for your short talks. And at the 3rd minute, you will hear the chime, and a second time on the 5th minute. Thank you very much for understanding. So I will call on the next.
Tawagin ko na po ang susunod na tagapagsalita.
For this second block. And she's Denise Margaret Matias.
Si Denise Margaret Matias. Siya po ay isang dalubhasa sa Research Unit Biodiversity sa University of Bonn para sa kanyang papel sa pagkuha ng pulot mula sa mga bubuyo na ginagawa ng mga katutubong tagbanwa sa Pilipinas. Siya rin po ay nagtatrabaho kasama ang mga katutubo sa Mongolian steppe ecosystem.
So, good morning everyone, good afternoon.
Magandang umaga at hapon sa inyong lahat.
So, as part of the research community, I wanted to just give
gusto ko lang magbigay na 3 puntos.
First is the outlook. So,
ito ang aking pananaw.
Of cautious optimism for wild foods, biodiversity.
Sa tungkol sa mga ligaw na pagkain, ito ay talagang mahalagang parte na ng mga kabuhayan ng mga katutubo at kailangan maging maingat tayo kapag ito ay ating ilalabas sa merkado para sa ekonomiyang global.
In other parts of the world, we have to be careful in commodifying them for the global economy to the point that they are no longer part of the
pag nangyari ito,
livelihood of the indigenous communities, but rather
tinatanggal natin ito mula sa
for a global market.
Kabuhayan ng mga katutubo.
However, we also see that
minsan, ang pananaliksik pwede itong maging isang kaibigan o kaaway. So pwede tayo maging kaibigan kapag tayo ay nananaliksik at pinag-aaralan natin ang mga pagkaing ligaw at kalikasan. Pero kung hindi tayo maingat, pwede rin nating mailagay sa alanganin ang mga kalikasang ito at ang mga pagkaing ligaw na ito. Dahil makakaabala tayo, makakasabagal ito sa mga karapatang panglupa at karapatang pang-isipan.
So the GPS coordinates of communities, and researchers sometimes think that, oh, this is nice to highlight the results, but actually
minsan kasi may mga dalubhasa na sa tingin nila lahat na lang pwedeng itala. Yun pala ay nagiging delikado ito at inalagay natin sa alanganin ng mga. Kaya ang WFBL network magandang ay pinapaalalahanan kaming mga mananaliksik.
And so I will not call myself an expert, but rather the
hindi po ako eksperto.
And that having this network will facilitate this connection.
Kaya makakatulong ang network na ito sa pagkonekta ng mga dalubhasa at papapaalahanan nila kaming mga dalubhasa na kailangan respetuhin pa rin natin lahat ng meron sa ating kalikasan. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Denise. I will now move on to the next speaker.
Dumako na po tayo sa susunod na tagapagsalita, si Matthew Fielding.
He's the Deputy Director and Community
Siya po ay mananaliksik
at SIANI and has worked as a field researcher
at nagtrabaho sa Amazon region ng Timog Amerika at Kanlurang Africa. Kakabalik lang po niya mula Stockholm matapos ang 2.5 na taon sa Bangkok. Siya po ang nangamahala sa mga komunikasyon ng SIANI. Ang kanyang focus sa pananaliksik ay tungkol sa pagsasaka, kalusugan ng lupa, at kabuhayan. Siya po ay interesado. Okay.
Thank you, Femi, and thank you.
Maraming salamat po
for organizing these fantastic events here. Yes, so I took the approach to these three questions I was asked to respond to. I'm going to respond to
Sagutin
all
ko po ang mga tatlong tanong na binigay niyo sa amin.
So really, I'm sure it's not news to everybody here, but wild
Hindi naman
food
po bago ito na ang mga pagkaing ligaw ay talagang nababanggit madalas sa mga diskurso tungkol sa sistema ng pagkain.
of the Committee on World Food Security initially not endorsing the Food Systems Summit in early 2021. And also another example from our research at SCI.
Panghalimbawa galing sa aking naisaliksik ay tungkol sa tungkol sa opinion ng mga magsasaka tungkol sa pagkaing ligaw. Ang halimbawa sa mga tubo.
In those associations themselves is only open to farmers who can reach a certain production quota.
Ang nangyayari, nagiging parte lang sila ng organisasyon kung sila ay makakapaggawa or makakapag-ani ng napakaraming tubo.
So I see that there are such huge barriers towards
Kaya tuloy nagkakaroon ng hadlang sa mga magsasakang ito.
With those who also are trying to work with wild foods. I also see some pitfalls in the sector. I hear when we talk about landscapes, when we talk about
Pag pinag-uusapan natin ang lupa, pinag-uusapan natin ang mga oportunidad. Ang mga lupaing ito, minsan hindi na binibigyan masyadong pansin ng mga usaping ito.
And sustainability, the word sustainability doesn't include
Ang salitang likas kaya,
sustainability often focuses on the more economic aspects of supply chains. So simply by us using that type of language isn't a way to put wild foods on the agenda. And also we shouldn't assume that wild foods, forest-based livelihoods, or either of those in the context of biodiversity will be represented in regional or global arenas.
Minsan hindi po binibigyan pansin masyado ang mga pagkaing ligaw at kalikasan.
Michael Fakiri, the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, is doing some great work in trying to raise some of these voices up. Indigenous peoples and local communities
Ang mga katutubo at lokal na komunidad,
are not so compatible with the definition of food systems that's often focused
hindi po sila minsan, hindi sila konektado masyado sa mga sistema ng
progress
pagkain.
and development are biased.
Hindi, minsan isinawalang bahala yung connection nila dito.
Harvested from those areas. But
Kasi yung mga ligaw na pagkain na kinukuha doon,
on its own, governments are often ill-equipped to handle the cases of minorities.
yung mga gobyerno hindi sila masyadong nakikialam or hindi sila masyadong maalam sa talagang pinagdadaanan ng ating mga katutubo pagdating sa pagkaing ligaw. Kaya nagkakaroon minsan ng mga hindi pagsasang-ayon.
It's a challenging position. I'm sure that's not news to anybody.
At hindi na po bago sa atin yun.
From where I sit today, and I work across a broad range of things, I see there are some opportunities. Things can.
Nakikita ko naman na mayroong mga oportunidad.
And when I've been asked for my own perspectives here, I think looking at the
Siguro pag tinanong nyo ako,
systems that are in place already that can be used to protect
meron ng mga legal na sistemang ginagawa ngayon
value in forest in other ways.
para maparami pa or mapataas pa yung halaga ng pagkain ligaw. Kailangan bigyang importansya ang tradisyonal na kaalaman. Kailangan protektahan natin ito. Protektahan sa pamamagitan ng batas na
and associated genetic resources form part of a single integrated heritage. You can't get an intellectual property on specific traditional practices. Yet, because these traditional cultural expressions are
Itong mga tradisyon na to ay mayroong mga katanungan tungkol dito sa pagdating sa legal aspeto.
there's even a UN
meron ngang organisasyon sa UN na may kinalaman sa mga tradisyonal na kaalaman. Itong mga prosesong ito ay masyadong technical. Masyado talagang technical ang mga bagay na ito.
And they show that by applying technical knowledge to legal systems, it can pay off. So it's my suggestion.
So ang aking suggestion ay
is to provide those community members with the technical knowledge of genetic resources.
Dapat ay mas maturuan natin ang mga katutubo tungkol sa mga kaalamang ito na masyadong technical. Kailangan mas mapaintindi natin sa kanila ang mga bagay na ito.
Further partnerships, funding, and continue the fantastic work it does within the region. Thanks for this opportunity.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Matthew, for giving us that insight or information.
Maraming salamat sa inyong opinion tungkol sa oportunidad.
I will have to move on to the
Dadako na po tayo sa susunod na takapagsalita.
I invite Grace Wong.
Imbitahin ko na po natin si Dr. Grace Wong.
Lightning speaker. She is a natural resource economist with an interest in understanding complexities of social, economic, and ecological trade-offs in the intersection of development, socio-political processes, and climate change. She has worked extensively
Siya
throughout
po ay nagtrabaho sa Timog Silangang Asya at Latin America. Ang kanyang pananaliksik ay tungkol sa mga serbisyong pang-ekosistema at kalagayan ng tao sa kagubatan.
In the distribution of benefits and risks from natural resource use and governance.
Siya po ay isang dalubhasa sa Stockholm Resilience Center.
Welcome, Grace.
Pagbati. Maraming salamat.
Thank you to everyone for your wonderful insights. I think I wanted to sort of build on a couple of things that
gusto kong pagtibayin pa ang ilang mga bagay na pinag-usapan kanina. Ang mga pagkaing ligaw ay laging mayroong kinalaman sa seguridad ng pagkain, nutrisyon at kalusugan. At meron din kinalaman sa kultura.
Management and customary knowledge of how forests and fallows and agricultural fields within a broader landscape of where local and indigenous people live. So the ability to continue harvesting using wild foods as part of a broader livelihood practice depends.
So ang kabuhayan talaga madalas nakasalalay sa pagkuha ng mga pagkaing ligaw sa ating mga kagubatan.
And I wanted to focus
gusto ko lang sanang pagtuunan ng pansin ang ilang mga puntos.
Political lock-ins to why it is such a challenge to get
minsan talaga nagiging hadlang makakuha ng karapatan para sa mga katutubo pagdating dito. Dahil napakaraming diskursong politikal na nagaganap,
where there are devolution policies, they are often only cover an incomplete set of rights.
Madalas ay hindi ito talagang nasasakop ang lahat ng kailangang malaman tungkol sa ligaw na pagkain.
So to the first point of what I think
sa aking unang puntos, diskursong ay tungkol sa diskursong politikal. Alam naman natin na
that are rooted in sort of local and indigenous norms and practices often go back centuries, but governments often consider such land.
Yung mga gobyerno, ang turing nila sa lupain ay hindi naman daw ginagamit at wala naman daw nagmamay-ari ng mga ito.
To have its roots back in the colonial and
pero alam naman natin na ang mga lupain na ito ay dati nang ginagamit ng ating mga katutubo. Pero para sa mga gobyerno, ito ay walang may-ari. At syempre, ang importante lang para sa gobyerno ay ang ekonomikong interes. Kaya ito ay nagiging hadlang sa pagprotekta sa ating kalikasan at mga kagubatan.
And such these kind of practices are often
Etong mga gawaing ito
barred or made illegal.
ay humahadlang at nagiging illegal.
Profitable forms of agriculture can take place.
Kaya ang gobyerno mas sumusuporta sa mga agrikulturang mas kumikita ng pera. Kaya pag gumagawa ng batas sa mga gobyerno, syempre ang papanigan nila ay yung mga pamamaraang agrikultura na kumikita ng pera.
So these pressures on community forest landscapes are really intense, and
nagkakaroon tuloy ng hadlang pagdating sa mga nagkakaroon ng problema pagdating sa pagpapahalaga at pagprotekta sa ating kalikasan at kagubatan.
In some cases, these changes may bring new opportunities for diversifying livelihoods.
Minsan naman ang pagbabago ay maganda,
and so on.
Ngunit
maybe livelihood dependencies and new forms of precarities in terms of uncertainty and access, or the exclusion from or inability to engage in these new systems that are emerging. So I think this leads to the second political lock-in that I wanted to talk about.
Ito yung pangalawang puntos na aking gustong pag-usapan. Tungkol sa polisiya, tungkol sa
the aim for devolution of rights. So for example, I focus a bit on the social forestry practices, on social forestry policies in Southeast Asia, which is actually expanding exponentially with very ambitious goals in all the countries in Southeast Asia. Well, the early focus of social forestry has been on empowerment and devolution of rights for forest management. In more recent decades, this has kind of evolved into formal schemes that are sort of aimed at agrarian transformations towards more intensive agriculture, or it has been a foundation to support market-based interests. So commercialization of forest products, community forest entrepreneurship, private sector investment. So this might be maybe the way that these such policies can take place, that it fits within a certain discourse. But it also means that these formal social forestry schemes, that is a real, I think, opportunity for local and indigenous rights, often only come with limited rights for limited time periods. They are conditional
talaga yung karapatang makukuha mula rito.
Formal management plans that are modeled on forest concessions. They often come with state-imposed restrictions on sites, on use and access.
Marami kasing hadlang at maraming bawal pagdating sa mga bagay na ito.
And informal rights really invisible within these practices.
Talagang hindi madaling makita ang mga karapatang ito. At ito ay nagiging problema. Actually, marami na ako napag-usapan. So, kaya
zoom in a little bit for what I think this network could do or could work on. And I think it's maybe one way is to really undo these lock-ins. It's kind of, how do you create significant shifts in narratives through alternative framings that maybe emphasize not just markets and profits, but notions of environmental justice or equity and local knowledge systems, as the previous speaker mentioned. So how do you kind of use these discourses to kind of...
Paano natin nagagamitin ang diskursong ito?
Discourses that are at play. And what might be, you know, and some...
Ano kaya yung pwedeng stratehiyang gamitin natin para
the power and some strategic coalition building as this network shows. And I think to have this kind of discursive diversity,
sa tingin ko naman ay para magkaroon ng ganitong diskurso, kailangan nating kahit paano natin mas maiintindihan pa ang mga komunidad na nakasalalay ang kabuhayan sa ating mga kagubatan.
Managed assessment process of what resources are there and what can be used and what boundaries should be drawn. So how do you bring that co-production of narratives and assessments into real policy making? Perhaps that is the power that this network can channel towards achieving. And I think it's about breaking this kind of
Sa tingin ko, tungkol ito sa
more transformational change in policy making in Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Grace, for that. Also, a touch of encouragement for the network to continue, and with a little more understanding also of those political lock-ins that are quite important to unravel. So I would invite Maria next to give us her point of view. Maria has been working with tropical forest. Maria Ridland has been working with tropical forest and indigenous people and local communities since early 1990s, with a special focus on the implications on IPLCs by logging, paper and pulp, and oil palm. The scope of the work has been both on policy and advocacy, with focus on regulation of the business. In addition, her work on customary tenure rights and the linkage to protection of biodiversity, support of indigenous knowledge, enhancing vital ecosystems and livelihoods. Her policy work also includes work on binding human rights due diligence and environmental defenders. Maria Ridland is with the Swedish Society for Nature Conservation. Maria?
Thank you so much, Femi. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. It's been a pleasure listening to all of you and all the expertise that have been opened up the arena for this discussion. And I would like to echo what has been said, that this is...
Gusto ko lang naman din ulitin kung ano yung mga napag-usapan na kanina.
And being a representative of NGO, I would also see us as a partner of
bilang isang kinatawan,
working with these issues and having this focus. And meanwhile, I've been listening to all the prominent speakers. I just thought that interesting review of the context now is that after
tingin ko, pag tinignan natin ang kontekstong ito, yung pag pinag-uusapan ang kalikasan natin, wala sa mga binanggit na target ang talagang natupad na.
Been addressed, like the targets on indigenous knowledge and indigenous people's participation in...
Ang target kadalasan ay mga katutubo, pero hindi naman talaga nabibigyan masyado ng importansya o halaga mga ito.
As a northern-based NGO, we are very much in that policy context. Meanwhile, we also see the reality on the ground. And I think starting this network on wild food and biodiversity.
Sa tingin ko, sa pagsimula ng network na ito ay nakakatulong talaga para mas matulungan natin ang mga taong ito. Para mas maabot natin ang mga ating mga kagubatan.
Is often very divided. It's either the forestry sector, it's the agriculture sector, but it's
talagang minsan hindi talaga nagsasang-ayon ang sektor na may kinalaman sa kagubatan at ang sektor na agrikultural.
EU, for example, is now talking about the legislation to...
Ngayon, pinag-uusapan namin yung mga batas. Ano ba ang magiging koneksyon ng agrikultura sa pagkain?
For example, palm oil, soy, beef, rubber, coffee, etc. And I mean, this is a responsibility that we have, and therefore we need to...
responsibilidad na meron tayo. Dapat talaga makaisip tayo ng mga makabagong paraan para talakayin ang mga problema at isyong ito.
According to the Gupta review, for example, more than almost $6 billion is spent annually.
Mahigit $6 billion ang ginagastos sa mga gawaing nakakasira sa ating kalikasan.
These people, local communities and NGOs, we know that this link between secured collective tenure, biodiversity, livelihood, and the self-reliance that we could actually create for Indigenous people, local communities, this is the key message that we also have to address on a policy arena. And I think that is, I mean, what has been said earlier.
Sa tingin ko ay yung mga nabanggit naman kanina, kailangan makapag-sang-ayon tayo sa isa't isa. Kailangan maikonekta natin yung karapatang pangtao sa ating kalikasan.
Sustainability has to come with human rights, with equity.
Yung likas kaya dapat kasama yan ng mga karapatang pangtao.
We often deal with the sector itself and we try to
madalas pinapalaganap natin
certification schemes to make logging more sustainable, more responsible.
Kailangan pag-usapan natin mga bagay tulad ng paano ba magiging mas pangmatagalan ang mga gawain tulad ng pagtotroso. Paano ito mas magiging likas kaya? Kailangan makita natin to sa isang mas pangkalahatang paraan.
Indigenous knowledge systems that's been neglected also
ang problema ay yung kaalaman na meron tayo dapat sa tungkol dito ay napapabayaan at hindi natin masyadong alam. Kailangan nating respetuhin kung ano nang meron doon. Kailangan nating respetuhin yung
preserve and enhance the value of biodiversity.
Siyensya at yung kaalaman ng mga katutubo.
And during the pandemic, we've seen how governments have undermined this.
Nung nakaraang pandemya, yung gobyerno parang medyo napabayaan ang isyong ito. At yung iba ay gumawa pa ng mga illegal na gawain.
To do this in a way where we actually link to NGOs, to the scientific arena and the policy arena.
Kailangan nating mapagkonekta yung mga NGO sa mga siyentipiko.
Could be very promotive because normally I think you look into a forest, you feel that okay, you will have sustainable logging, you can extract the value, but you will still have the biodiversity values kept if you do it accordingly to the ordinary way of looking at the forestry industry. But there's been none of these discussions on the way that forests also provide food.
Ang nakakalungkot ay minsan napapabayaan ng mga usapang ito. Hindi masyado napapag-usapan.
We need to also make this very visible in the policy work. That forest is not about the cubic timber you can take out sustainably or not. It's about a whole livelihood, supportive and cultural identity.
Tungkol po ito sa pagsuporta natin sa mga kabuhayang may kinalaman sa ating mga kagubatan.
In a way that it should be continuously managed. And I think we need to...
Kailangan talaga may tamang pamamahala sa ating mga kagubatan.
The work on collective tenure, which has been an obstacle, which has not been recognized even in Sweden, as we heard before. So I think this is a momentum that we have, and I think this is a potential role of the network to further emphasize on land tenure security, biodiversity, livelihood, and self-reliance in a very nice setting that we would actually work together and develop further. And I also agree that the experience and the knowledge and the ownership is with the communities, but we need to bridge in order to make sure that what takes place
kailangan masiguro natin
doesn't undermine the work that is conducted in the reality and in the context in communities. So that is what I would like to forward as a message. And then I think we need to develop further policy documents that we could actually rely on and to be able to give this picture, because it's so absent in current policy work related to forests. And Indigenous food systems relates to the whole landscape perspective, actually, even to the whole coastal arena that we are now trying to develop work together with partners to give this landscape perspective on the value.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Maria.
Marami pong salamat, Maria, sa pagbahagi ng iyong
your perspective
nalalaman
from the work that you do at the
mula sa iyong karanasan.
We can all engage more actively or more vigorously, maybe with work together and how we can build build on that role as a bridge, and who are those that can actually work together more in order to be a little bit forceful in a way, and more targeted in the policy arena. So thank you for that, and I thank
Marami pong salamat at maraming salamat po sa lahat ng nagsalita kanina.
Thank you very much. But I will now move on as we are
Dadako na po tayo. Medyo nauubos na po ang oras natin at meron pa po tayong mga pakikinggang mga tagapagsalita.
Build up from that last point of Maria about the bridge. So this set of speakers will be led by Mix Padilla, who is our chairperson.
Pangungunahan po ang mga tagapagsalita ni Mix Padilla.
I think coming back to the region, the set of speakers in this block are those that are working here in the region, in Asia, in particular in Southeast Asia. So I would ask them, they are asked also of the same questions, but maybe
tatanungin po sila ng mga parehong tanong na tinanong sa mga tagapagsalita kanina.
That experience of working
tungkol sa kanilang mga karanasan,
that bridge role between communities and probably policy, state,
sa pagkonekta ng mga komunidad sa mga gumagawa ng polisiya.
Global level if they have that as well in their roles. So I'll introduce first our
ipapakilala ko na po ang ating pangatlong tagapagsalita.
This set of talks will be Mix Padilla, who is, as I mentioned,
Mix Padilla po,
for NTFP-EP Asia and
chairman ng NTFP-EP Asia.
She has been working alongside Indigenous peoples and local communities on policy advocacy issues related to tenure, gender, health, and environmental rights. She's also active in the Zero Extreme Poverty 2030 movement, and her background is in anthropology and gender studies. Mix.
Good afternoon to everyone.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat po sa pag-imbita sa amin, sa akin.
Livelihoods toward an outlook of inclusive food systems in Asia 2030. I especially like the word linking in the title of our
event. Gusto ko talaga yung salitang
NTFP-EP is
pagkokonekta.
About 2 months into the lockdown last year, when we, the city,
nung nakaraang taon, nung nagsimula yung lockdown,
a woman leader shared with us that during the
may nagbahagi sa amin na nung siya ay nalungkot, pumupunta sila sa kagubatan at nagtitingin-tingin lang sila doon.
And certainly, physical distancing in those isolated hills would not be an issue. As an added
hindi naging problema ang social distancing sa kabundukan at kagubatan. Ito, merong larawan. So ito ang naging paraan niya para sumaya at makalimutan ang problemang idinulot ng lockdown.
We are not as worried as others about surviving the lockdown because we have the
Hindi tayo masyado nag-aalala dahil sa lockdown dahil meron tayong kagubatan.
One, they all came from indigenous communities.
Yung mga katutubo ang nagsabi nito.
Indigenous community conserved areas or what Teddy Bagilat.
Sila po ang tagabantay ng mga kagubatan at kabundukan.
Only possible if the environment remained healthy and the protective traditions.
Nasabi lang siguro nila yon dahil malusog ang kanilang kapaligiran.
Forest, foods, and responding to the pandemic. And most likely,
ito ang kanilang naging sagot sa pandemya.
The realities and after effects of this pandemic all the way up to our targeted 2030.
Ano kaya ang magiging epekto ng pandemyang ito sa 2030? Madalas ako tinatanong, saan natin ipapasok yung usapin ng pagkain sa kultura? Tungkol ba ito sa pinagkukuhanan ng pagkain o teknolohiya na may kinalaman sa pagsasaka? Sa mga lutuin ba? Sa presentasyon ng pagkain? Ano kaya ang tinuturing ng isang kultura na maganda? Parte ba ito ng ritual? Kung ang pagkain ba ay instrumento ng pagkakaibigan?
Then it is under social system or social relations.
Ang pagkain ba ay isang usaping panlipunan?
Outsiders who need this kind of dividing or compartmentalization. For most indigenous peoples, it seems
Para sa mga katutubo, nakikita nila agad na magkakakonekta ang pagkain at ang mga usaping ito. Pag tinanong mo sila tungkol sa pagkain,
already mentioned earlier by the others, esteemed
ito talaga ang kanilang mga mababanggit.
And holistic way. Now, half of the people in these indigenous peoples and local communities are women. And certainly we have
karamihan ng mga taong, ng mga katutubong aming kinausap ay mga kababaihan.
For women in the 1980s, where maybe some of our participants have not yet even been born. But I observe that there are a lot of things that still need to be followed up on with regard to
Marami
women.
pa rin tayong kailangang pahalagahan pa pagdating sa kabuhayan at kagubatan. Una,
danger of thinking that communities are homogeneous, meaning we expect that members of a community usually have
minsan ba sa tingin natin ang isang komunidad ay pare-pareho ang kanilang iniisip?
Or territories, we saw that there were differences in the drawings of women compared
Nakita namin na may pagkakaiba-iba sa mga didrawing o ginuhit ng mga miyembro ng komunidad na yon, kahit sila ay galing sa isang komunidad lamang. Ano nilagay nila? Tapos kumuha kami ng impormasyon pa. Kinumpara namin yung impormasyon na kinuha namin mula sa kalalakihan at kababaihan at magkaiba ang kanilang mga naging sagot. Meron talaga mga pagkakaiba sa mga sagot nila. Ang tanong ay, kanino tayo mas maniniwala?
The men were proudly and eloquently describing their farming systems.
Yung mga lalaki, ang nilalarawan nila kadalasan ay yung pagsasaka nila. Pero yung mga babae,
but their answers were not officially received. Such a loss of local knowledge. I believe we all accept that tenurial security to the land is important for the sustainability of food sources and forest-based livelihoods. Who do we recognize as the legitimate representatives in discussions of land? Who do we recognize?
Sino ba ang dapat natin mas paniwalaan? Sino ba dapat ang pinuno ng tahanan? Sino ba ang mga sikat pagdating sa pag-aari ng mga legasyaman na ito? Ang babae ba o ang lalaki? Sa isang komunidad, nung nagreklamo mga lalaki dahil di daw sila imbitado sa mga seminar tungkol sa kalusugan. Eh yung mga babae, imbitado sila.
Have we gone beyond this way of thinking in our program designs and implementation? I don't know if I should be glad that after several years, even decades, these kinds of messages that I tend to share seem to be relevant still. Or if I should be sad that the messages remain needed.
Hindi ko alam kung matutuwa ba dapat ako na ganito pa rin ang pinag-uusapan hanggang ngayon. Tungkol sa sitwasyon ng mga kababaihan sa mga komunidad malapit sa kagubatan.
If we are not able to advocate for more equitable gender relations, the links we talk about in this forum that we want to strengthen.
Mahirap kung hindi natin makikita o hindi natin bibigyan ng parehong halaga ang mga kababaihan at kalalakihan pagdating sa kanilang mga opinyon sa kagubatan.
In 2016, I was part of a study on indigenous.
Sa 2016, gumawa ako ng saliksik.
One of our exercises was to ask the indigenous children.
Tinanong namin ng mga kabataan kung ano yung sa tingin nila, ano yung gusto nilang mangyari sa kanilang tirahan.
They want their culture and their environment to be intact when they are grown up.
Gusto nila paglaki nila na magkaroon ng halaga ang kanilang kapaligiran at ang kanilang kultura sa iba.
Bridge to the youth is being built right now, while the knowledge still sticks with the elders. Finally, may I share what I frequently say ever since the world started talking about what our quote new normal unquote should be like. I believe
bahagi ko lang kung ano yung tingin ko ngayon sa new normal. Karamihan sa atin gusto maging parte ng new normal na yun.
Among them, valuing the environment. building up local
Mas pahalagahan natin dapat ang ating kapaligiran. Lalo na pag may kinalaman sa paggawa ng pagkain, sa seguridad ng pagkain. Sa level ng lokal na komunidad. Pahalagahan natin ang kapaligiran, palakasin pa natin ang mga lokal na ekonomiya, pahalagahan pa natin, bigyang importansya ang tingin ng lokal na komunidad at
let us not forget the gender dimension of our work, as well as keeping grounded at the community level. Holding hands, even virtually or symbolically, we learn more, we will be better heard, and hopefully we move together and move more people toward valuing wild foods, environment, and forest-based livelihoods. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po. And good day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mix, for that, I would say, poignant with all the pictures and the message behind what you all have been saying. It's really
Maraming
about
salamat po sa makabuluhang presentasyon.
Making visible the invisible. So from forests being invisible in this very big discussions about food systems and food security, sometimes it gets hidden.
Minsan kasi hindi masyado napapag-usapan ang mga usaping ito na may kinalaman sa seguridad ng pagkain.
More often, women is invisible. And so
kadalasan ng mga kababaihan hindi sila madaling makita pagdating sa usaping ito. Sila ay hindi pinapakinggan.
How we should listen and observe.
Kailangan mas pakinggan din natin sila paminsan-minsan.
The values that you have summed up that is important for the new normal. Now
Importante ito ngayong meron tayong new normal.
Lightning speakers, I would invite them all to the spotlight. I first call on Jeremy.
Tawagin ko na po si Jeremy.
He is a program consultant for the McKnight Foundation and the member of the expert group and the steering committee for the expert group on wild foods, biodiversity, and livelihood. And in his capacity as a program consultant, he's overseeing grant making to organizations which support indigenous ethnic minority communities to protect their land and natural resources rights and management systems in the face of rampant economic development in the region. His background is in sustainable agriculture, and his interests include learning from traditional systems which combine the farm and the forest. He is also a trustee of the Non-Timber Forest Products Exchange Program. Jeremy?
Kia ora, everybody. Very nice to be with you all. I'm just going to be very quick because a lot of what I've said...
Mabilis lang po ako ngayon. Kasi yung sasabihin ko ngayon, nasabi na rin naman ng iba. Ang punto ko ay ang papel ng mga tao na may kinalaman sa pagkaing ligaw. Delikado talaga minsan pag sinasabi ng gobyerno na walang kinalaman ang mga tao sa ligaw na pagkain.
They looked at 93 studies from around about 1990 to 2015 and found that 90% of indigenous...
halos 90% na mga katutubo
So people are planting and they're deliberately leaving and using their...
So yung mga tao, nagtatanim na lang sila tapos napapabayaan nila. Tapos meron pang isang pananaliksik na ginawa. Ang dami-daming pagkain sa kagubatan, ngunit pero parang napapabayaan ang mga ito. Hindi na natin alam kung paano gawin ang mga bagay na ito. Kaya ito ang papel ng mga tao sa pagkaing ligaw. Nagkaroon ng diskurso ang UN sa mga katutubo. Tungkol lang naman ito lagi sa politika, sabi ng isa. May mga ibang tao raw na parang nakikitira lang. At nakikigamit ng kanilang mga likas yaman.
This is a major issue. For example,
malaking issue talaga ngayon yung pag mayroong kinalaman sa karapatang panglupa.
In the Philippines, there's the Forest Rights Act in India, there's the land law in Cambodia, there's
Sa iba't ibang bansa, ang dami-daming batas na pero hindi talaga madalas nasusundan ang mga batas na ito. Kinalulungkot kong sabihin.
So there's some respect and some recognition of people's rights. And I think
kailangan talaga mas respetuhin natin ang karapatan ng mga tao. Kailangan nating harapin na mayroong napakalaking sistema ng diskriminasyong nagaganap.
Against small farmers, against indigenous people.
Diskriminasyon sa mga katutubo, diskriminasyon sa mga maliliit na magsasaka. Merong malaking sistema na kailangan nating ayusin pagdating dito. Isang halimbawa ay ang hindi pagkilala sa mga karapatan ng ibang tao. Mahalaga ito pagdating sa mga komunidad ng katutubo.
We need to look at indigenous traditional practices. We need to
Kailangan tignan natin ulit, makita natin ulit, matutunan natin ulit ang mga tradisyonal na ginagawa ng mga katutubo.
How does it all work with biodiversity? I mean, that's
Paano ba nila ginagawa ang mga bagay na ito?
maybe are there models that we can
Siguro ang pwede rin nating tignan pa
work with or get information from
ay
community models, co-management models
ang mga lokal na komunidad.
that are alternatives to these standard models of development? How do we build evidence and voice and capacity of local
Paano
people?
natin palalakasin at paiigtingin pa ang boses ng mga katutubo? Kailangan bigyan din natin ng boses ang mga kabataan. At bigyan natin sila ng kaalaman. Paano ba nila gagawin ang mga bagay na ito? Na may kinalaman sa tradisyonal na kaalaman, na may kinalaman sa ating mga kagubatan. Isa pang issue ay ang kalusugan. Tingnan mo ang nangyari matapos ang pandemya. Paano ba makakatulong ang mga sistema ng pagkain na ito sa nangyayari ngayong mayroong pandemya?
Linking communities with decision makers. Get decision makers to go and visit communities and sit down with them and get them to talk.
Dapat ay upuan natin ang mga komunidad dito at kailangan mas pakinggan pa natin sila kung ano ang mga saloobin nila.
Using models, using evidence. And then again, I suppose the last suggestion is this whole idea of food sovereignty. We need to bring that up. It's wild foods is part of food sovereignty. It's part of control of food. It's part of control of resources. Thank you.
Salamat po.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'll just jump right along to the next speaker, Clarissa Arida. Clarissa is the Director for Program Development and Implementation of the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, or ACB, where she manages the center's portfolio and capacity building and program and policy development to assist ASEAN member states on biodiversity conservation initiatives. To joining the ACB, Clarissa was program manager for environment for about 12 years at the UNDP in the Philippines, where she handled program and global environmental issues such as biodiversity conservation, climate change, marine, and coastal resources management. Clarissa.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Femi, and thank you for inviting ACB in this.
Salamat sa pag-imbita po sa akin sa diskursong ito.
Biodiversity, wild foods, and sustainable livelihood. We have heard so much today, and these are really very close.
Marami tayong napakinggan ngayon na mga magagaling na tagapagsalita.
Over the past 2 years, given the impetus from the Convention on Biological Diversity and the work that we are doing at the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, nature is declining globally at unprecedented rates and with grave impacts.
Unti-unting nasisira ang ating kalikasan at nakakaapekto ito sa mga iba't ibang tao sa iba't ibang parte ng mundo. Alam natin na ito ay may epekto, pangmalawakang epekto sa seguridad ng pagkain at sa nutrisyon.
number of sustainable development goals.
Maaapektuhin rin ang mga ibang mga layunin na gusto nating maabot.
If ecosystems and habitats are degraded, we will eventually be losing our wild foods. And yeah.
Mawawala sa atin ang mga pagkaing ligaw kapag unti-unti na nasira din ang ating kalikasan.
Biodiversity and ecosystem services has also shown that traditional agrobiodiversity is in decline, along with the associated indigenous and local knowledge. And this is owing to the shift in agricultural intensification and high-yielding crop varieties, which have been the focus of most of the agricultural production systems that we see over the last 2 or 3 decades, the intensification of agricultural production. And we need to protect our indigenous.
Kailangan natin protektahan ang tradisyonal na kaalaman. Marami talagang naninirahan ngayon sa matinding kahirapan. Kaya mayroong problema sa nutrisyon talaga. Dito sa Timog Silangang Asya, ay marami nakakaranas ng ganitong problema at ganitong issue. Kaya tuloy mas pinahahalagaan ang agrikultura. Sumasang-ayon po ako na kailangan natin maging positibo pagdating sa diskurso na meron tayo ngayon tungkol sa kalikasan. Marami tayong narinig na magandang gawain mula sa miyembro ng network. Kailangan suportahan natin ang mga lokal na komunidad sa pamamagitan ng mga iba't ibang programa.
And we also support sustainable livelihood. And this is
kailangan suportahan natin ang kabuhayang pangmatagalan.
Biodiversity-based sustainable food and products that we need to provide sustainable income as well to the local community.
Kailangan din natin makapagbigay ng matagalang pagkakakitaan.
In terms of the processes under the Convention on Biological Diversity. As many of you are following, I think we are now in the midst of the meetings of the subsidiary body and implementation. This is very critical in the development.
Mahalaga ito.
The new post-2020 global biodiversity framework, and therefore we have to work with global.
Kailangan natin magtrabaho, makipagtulungan sa pribadong sektor para masiguro na mga prosesong ito ay maging oportunidad tungo sa likaskaya. Magkakaroon ng negosasyon na ay ang layunin niya ay mapag-isa ang mga negosyo, sektor ng negosyo.
The role that we can provide as a regional organization in the ASEAN. Here in the ASEAN region, there are also cross-sectoral processes where the issues on wild foods, biodiversity, livelihoods, and inclusive food systems could be taken such that by 2030, we could also look forward.
Sana sa taong 2030 ay magkaroon tayo ng mas pangkalahatang sistema ng pagkain sa Asya. Paano natin magagawa ang pagbabagong ito? Dapat magkaroon ng kolaborasyon sa iba't ibang sektor. Ang mga leader ng ASEAN dapat mas pahalagahan nila ang konserbasyon ng kalikasan para mabigyan ng oportunidad ang mga iba't ibang grupo kagaya ng SIANI Expert Group.
To raise common issues of concern for the benefit of everyone in the region. And we at the center, the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity would be...
Meron tayong ASEAN Center.
And as part of the expert group on wild foods and biodiversity in this forum. The ACB's trust on mainstreaming of biodiversity in the various sectors has been echoed in this ASEAN leaders call, which reaffirmed ASEAN's commitment to promote biodiversity conservation and mainstreaming biodiversity across all sectors. So lastly, in terms of the role for the network, the network
ng network na ito,
and we would
pwede tayo maging kapartner o kasosyo ng iba pang organisasyon. Nagsimula na kami ilang taon na nakalipas. Pinagsasama natin ang usaping kalikasan at agrikultura
engagement with SIANI and the network here,
At
we can do
at
this.
sa pamamagitan sa pagtulong ng SIANI, posible ito.
Thank you, Clarice.
Salamat po. Salamat,
for also
Clarice.
that encouragement that the network could continue indeed with a partnership with the ACB. I move on and call Matthew John.
Tatawagin ko na si Matthew John.
Director of Last Forest Enterprises, a social enterprise incubated by Keystone Foundation, a civil society organization of which he is also a co-founder director. Matthew's background is in rural development, particularly administration and finance for rural development organizations and field projects. His interests are in enterprise development and organic certification for small growers and harvesters. He has varied experiences working on different projects in India as well as in Bangladesh. Matthew.
Thank you, Femi.
Maraming salamat, Femi.
I'm not going to stick to those 3 points that
Hindi po ako masyadong magtatagal sa 3 puntos.
sharing and speaking.
Yung mga nagsalita kanina, mukhang napag-usapan na nila ang mga bagay na ito kanina. Mas bibigyan ko na, pagtutuunan ko na pansin ang mga bagay na ito. Kahapon, pinagdiwang natin ang International Women's Day.
Close to 200 people on campus and
200 tao mahigit mayroon sa aming paaralan. Lalo na mga kababaihan. Naisip ko tuloy, itong mga babaeng to ay parte ng ating ekosistema. At madalas sila yung parang hindi pa natin halos nakikita sa proseso. At kadalasan sila pa naman yung mga may napakaraming kaalaman. At sila ang nagpapasa sa kanilang mga anak ng kaalamang ito. Para sa akin, nung nakita ko mga babaeng ito,
and without their knowledge, without their
kung wala siguro sila, wala yung kaalaman nila,
those landscapes would not remain for long. And I think they have to
hindi magtatagal itong mga lupaing ito. Kaya kailangan natin sila para makapagplano tayo para sa ating hinaharap. Kapag hindi kasi nila napasa yung kaalaman sa kanilang mga anak, malaki yung mawawala sa atin pagdating sa kaalaman tungkol sa mga bagay na ito.
The other thing, when I again look at these women,
kapag tinitignan ko ang mga babaeng ito, hindi natin sila tinitignan bilang mga pinuno. Ang tingin natin sa mga babae ay mga taga-ani, tagakuha ng pagkain, tagahanda ng pagkain. Hindi sila, para sa atin, hindi sila mga pwedeng maging pinuno ng komunidad nila.
But if we're talking about making these communities sustainable,
pero pag ang pinag-uusapan natin ay ang pagpapatagal ng isang komunidad,
built around these systems, and what Teddy was talking about right up in the beginning of enterprises, I think that's something that we need to take forward. We see even in the fair trade world, more than 70% of enterprises are led by women. And we tend to forget that.
Marami ng babae ngayon ang leader at may-ari ng mga iba't ibang enterprise o negosyo. Gusto ko lang naman iparating para sa hinaharap ay marami sa mga diskursong meron tayo, hindi tayo ang gagawa ng desisyon para sa mga komunidad na ito. Kailangan tayo lang ang magbibigay ng mga paraan
with our thoughts and our ideas
para makapagdesisyon sila ng sarili nila. Kailangan makapagdesisyon nila sila ng sarili nila tungkol sa kanilang tirahan o tahanan.
and their households, the policies that we want to make.
Kapag hindi natin masyado binibigyan ng halaga ang mga kababaihan, ay walang mangyayari. Kailangan bigyan natin pa ng mas halaga ang mga kababaihan. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Matthew, for that thoughtful reminder to us about women, where they should be placed in this whole discussion. They are at the
Mga
front.
babae sila dapat ang binibigyan ng importansya. Maraming salamat po sa pagbahagi ng iyong opinion.
About who needs to be part of the network moving forward. And again, our role in this whole facilitation, that we are just facilitators and not really the doers in a sense. I would move to Dr. Ramon Razal.
Dadako na po ako kay Dr. Ramon Razal, ang susunod nating tagapagsalita.
Is the professor and former dean at the University of the Philippines in Las Bañas, the College of Forestry and Natural Resources, and recently have been awarded, so congratulations, Dr. Razal, by the National Research Council of the Philippines for Achievement in Agriculture and Forestry. He's a professor at the College of Forestry and Natural Resources and has served 2 terms as president of the National Research Council of the Philippines. He teaches non-timber forest products and other forest products utilization courses. He's also a trustee of the Non-Timber Forest Products Exchange Program and has done research and published articles on various NTFPs such as bamboo, resins, and other chemical products from forest plants. And he's co-author of The Wild Tastes in Asia, Coming Home to the Forest for Food. Dean?
Thank you, Femi.
Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Femi, and a pleasant day to everyone.
Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat.
I teach non-timber forest products in the university.
Nagtuturo po ako sa UP tungkol sa mga at ito ay isang bagong asignatura, bagong usapin na kinukuha ng mga estudyante ng BS Forestry. Ito po ay kailangan po siyang kunin ng mga BS Forestry na mag-aaral sa aming universidad. Bilang guro na magiging mga mangungubat, tinuturo ko sa kanila ang kagubatan ay hindi lang tungkol sa mga puno. Marami ding mga ibang bagay na pwedeng ibigay ng ating mga kagubatan. Paano maipapasok ang diskurso tungkol sa pagkain pagdating sa kagubatan? Si Brown, na isang Amerikanong dalubhasa, ay gumawa naglista po siya ng higit sa 100 pagkaing ligaw sa Pilipinas. Kahit na ginawa niya ito, ang tingin niya ay hindi raw ganoon karami yung pagkain na meron sa mga kagubatan natin dito. Mas marami pa rin daw yung sa mga kagubatan sa mas malimig na bansa.
Many American soldiers survived in tropical forest for long periods of time.
Noong may gera, marami namang sundalo ang nabuhay sa mga kagubatan. Kung ano man yung pwedeng makain mula sa kagubatan, ito ay kinakain nila. Marami na mga aral na ginawa tungkol sa mga pagkaing ligaw ng Pilipinas. Ngunit, ilan kaya sa mga pagkaing ligaw na yon ang kinakain talaga natin? Sino pa ang gumagamit at kumakain ng mga ligaw na pagkain na ito? Paano sila ginagamit? Nakakalungkot. Hindi pa masyado gaanong naaaral ang tungkol sa bagay na ito.
The National Greening Program of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources includes
ang DENR, sinasama niya ang seguridad ng pagkain. Kawayan tsaka ratan, sinasama nila madalas sa usapin ng
the sustainable development of wild foods as part of the interventions that would enable
kadalasan hindi sinasama ang ligaw na pagkain. Pagdating sa usapin ng seguridad ng pagkain. Sana po ay mas makilala natin ang ligaw na pagkain at na may kinalaman ito sa seguridad ng pagkain.
Network that will serve as a bridge to the
Sana po ang network na ito ay magsilbing tulay ng mga mananaliksik at ibang mga tao may kinalaman sa usaping ito. Ang mga kababaihan
especially of course the indigenous communities
at mga katutubo.
because much is at stake for them.
Kasi talagang meron itong kinalaman sa kanila. Importante ito sa kanila. Maraming pwedeng mawala kung ipapagsawalang bahala natin sila.
Thank you very
Salamat
much,
po.
Dr. Ramon Razal, and also expressing the unifying role, the bridging role of a network like the Wild Foods Biodiversity and Livelihood Network. I move on to Dr. Lu Hong Chong, currently works at the Southern Institute of Ecology in Vietnam, under the Vietnam Academy of Science and Technology as its director. He has done work on databasing biodiversity in southern Vietnam and has led numerous researchers on botany, evolutionary biology, genetics, and ecology. He is a member of the NTFP-EP and works closely as an advisor for NTFP-EP Vietnam. Dr. Chung?
Thank you, Femi.
Maraming
Hello,
salamat.
everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Naririnig niyo po ba ako?
I think we are running out of the time now, so I will go
Medyo
shortly.
nauubos na ang ating oras, kaya bibilisan ko na ang aking sabihin.
So now, first of all, we have a question on our
Mayroong katanungan tungkol sa ligaw na pagkain.
food system in Asia to 2030. So I have some point like this.
Meron akong halimbawa na papapakita.
We think that not only here, in Asia we are facing many challenges in terms of
Marami tayong mga hadlang na hinaharap pagdating sa pagkaing ligaw.
And according to our recent research, we area of natural forest and also the natural stock of wild food tend to go down very much. Meanwhile, exotic foods become more abundant, and in any way, we believe that wild food are still important for local community.
Mahalaga talaga ang ligaw na pagkain lalo na sa mga katutubo at lokal na komunidad. May kinalaman ito sa seguridad ng pagkain at sa ekonomiya natin.
Meanwhile, we know that
Alam naman natin,
natural products including
yung ekonomiya ay meron din kinalaman sa mga produktong natural. At sa hinaharap,
we have now the increasing impacts of environment-friendly living style, clean food, and ecotourism.
Kailangan meron tayong mga mas malinis na pagkain.
Many wild food become specialty now in the city.
Marami nauuso na ulit ngayon ang mga pagkain ligaw.
This bring more opportunity for development.
Mas marami oportunidad para sa mga lokal na komunidad na kumukuha ng mga ligaw na pagkain ito.
If we do not have a suitable strategy or vision, in the future we will see very low, very how to say, very little wild food in the wild, and they will find difficult to recover.
Baka maubusan tayo ng ligaw na pagkain sa hinaharap, kaya kailangan natin mas pahalagahan ng mga ito.
When we strive to transform and envisage inclusive food system toward the future, we, in any case, we believe that wild food are still abundant.
Naniniwala ako na
regardless exotic foods coming day and day, and we believe there's always still potential to develop to bring better benefit to community. But the problem is we do not know which one can be included in the
problema, hindi natin alam kung alin ba sa mga ito ang kailangan nating isama sa mga plano ukol sa pagprotekta sa ating paligiran.
In order to reduce their relying on natural resources, but they don't know how to develop They don't know which product to develop for the local
Hindi
community.
nila tuloy alam kung alin sa mga produkto ang kailangan nila bigyang mas bigyang pansin.
Will continue reducing. If the natural resource and deforestation still happen, we will see the threats to local culture and the local knowledge on using wild food in particular and natural resources in general. And this may happen everywhere. But in current projects of conservation of biodiversity, natural stock of wild food have not been concerned. We do not pay much attention to wild food in those projects.
Hindi natin masyado binibigyang pansin kasi ang mga pagkaing ligaw.
Including development project for communities. This is because we lack of understanding.
Kasi hindi natin masyado naiintindihan ang mga to. Hindi lang tayo. Tayo ngayon, pati yung mga
villagers also.
Pati yung mga katutubo mismo, yung mga parte ng lokal na komunidad, hindi nila masyado naiintindihan.
Enough understanding on also outsider who
kung ano yung mga pagkaing ligaw na yan.
Understand the important role of wild food for community. Normally they say that the minor products, they just pick some wild vegetable for food, so on. But they don't know that wild food are very important for the local nutrition.
Hindi nila alam na importante ang ligaw na pagkain sa nutrisyon.
And actually, the wild food provide security for local communities, especially
ang ligaw na pagkain ay may kinalaman sa seguridad ng pagkain.
They cannot cultivate other things in their farm. And many projects and also
maraming mga proyekto
they don't really understand the high potential.
Hindi talaga nila masyado naiintindihan kung ano yung mga pagkaing ligaw na yan. Ano ang kinalaman yan sa
very high potential for economic improvement for local community everywhere.
Paano mas mapapalawak nito ang isang komunidad?
For its future outlook.
Para sa hinaharap?
I think we should have a comprehensive strategic plan.
Sa tingin ko kailangan meron tayo talagang maging plano.
On community, private sector, and technical support. There are some points that we should pay attention to.
Na may kinalaman sa pagpapalawak palalo ng ligaw na pagkain.
And other resources that we try to database the wild food.
Palalo.
This is for us very basic, very baseline data, so we know what wild food people are using.
Kailangan malaman din natin kung ano bang mga pagkaing ligaw na madalas ginagamit ng mga tao ngayon.
Economic benefits and the important also how to deliver information with some speaker before we say that if we do not promote or deliver this information adequately, we may cause even threats to the local forest. The second thing we want to note here is we should develop conservation projects.
Kailangan mas paunlarin pa natin ang mga proyektong may kinalaman sa pagprotekta ng mga pagkaing ligaw. Siguro pwede tayong pumili ng mga produkto at gumawa tayo ng proyekto na mas magpapaunlad pa ng mga pagkaing ligaw na ito.
It's not only the project, but we need private sector, we need businessmen, we also the local people.
Kailangan din natin bigyan pansin pa mga lokal na tao sa komunidad. Kailangan sundan natin ang
we have observed many projects which fail in developing NTFP, and we know that many that
alam natin na maraming hindi susunod dito.
The third one for our network is we should join and through this promote the environment friendly initiatives. For example, now we have an environment-friendly living style, the new trend in clean foods, and also ecotourism. With this, we may promote wild food also. So the fourth point here, we think that many people don't understand about the wild food, so we need a communication program for awareness, also for policy maker and implementer of projects.
Thank you, Dr. Chu.
So in all activities,
maybe you can wrap up in 30 seconds.
Yeah, okay. So I have a 2 point more. So in all activity, we should include the participation of local communities and the tradition of EP exchange. So we think the network should promote exchange of lesson learned among communities. Yeah, that's the point I want to talk with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Trung.
Maraming salamat po, Dr. Trung.
Very practical suggestions for how we can.
Maraming salamat sa mga practical na suhestyon na iyong binahagi.
I would just now invite Gordon John Thomas.
Bitahin ko lang po si Gordon John Thomas na ang ating huling tagapagsalita ngayong araw na ito.
Gordon John Thomas is currently working in PACOS Trust as a coordinator of Natural Resources Management Program. The program is responsible for empowering the indigenous peoples all over Sabah on customary stewardship of their natural resources, mainly through their good practice and traditional knowledge in protecting sustainable use and restoration of their resources in their customary territories. PACOS is here too as representative of the Civil Society Forum on Social Forestry and ASEAN platform for local communities, indigenous peoples organizations, and civil society organizations to communicate key messages to the ASEAN member states on a more inclusive people-centered forestry in the ASEAN in the themes of community economy and livelihoods, forest tenure and access rights, inclusive forest governance, and safeguards. Gordon is Dusun Tatana, raised in Tenom and currently living in Penampang in Sabah. Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Maraming salamat po.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Magandang umaga at magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Thank to all my CSO Forum colleagues.
Gusto ko magpasalamat sa aking mga kasamahan.
All the points for the lightning message for today. And thank you for the organizer for giving the
Salamat din sa nag-organisa ng talakayang ito.
In ASEAN, the opportunity to be a dialogue partner and to participate in this very important discussion. Over the past 10 years, the CSO Forum has been working with the region.
Sa nakaraang 10 taon, nagtatrabaho kami.
IPLCs and family farmers in forested landscape to contribute to a more people-centered forestry in Asia. We believe that by 20, the link between wild food, biodiversity, livelihood, and inclusive.
Sa tingin namin sa taong 2030, magiging mas pangkahalahatan ay magiging sikat na ito at magkakaroon ng contribution sa ating sistema ng pagkain at kalusugan.
Key mechanism in securing access and benefit to land, territory, and resources for the IPLC, youth and gender empowerment, indigenous knowledge.
Mas mabibigyang halaga ang mga kabataan, ang mga pababaihan.
Community-based non-timber forest product and forest-based enterprise. Overall, it will contribute to the achievement of.
Sa tingin ko ay makakatulong talaga kami para mas makamit ang mga ito.
However, we must start break down the silo and work together. So we want all this to become a reality.
Ay, gusto namin lahat ito maging realidad.
Inclusive food system can be achieved if there is
kayang-kaya naman makamit ang ganitong maayos sa sistema ng pagkain.
And ownership of forests for IPLCs was identified as one of the key factors to achieving poverty eradication, zero hunger, and gender equality. Going beyond tenure security means that government and stakeholders.
Ang gobyerno dapat kailangan sumusuporta rin sila sa mga kababaihan at kabataan sa paggawa ng polisiya at paggawa ng desisyon. lalo na sa paggamit ng lupain at mga likas yaman at sistema ng pagkain. Kailangan maging mas pangkalahataan ang sistema ng pagkain. Ang mga kabataan at kababaihan ay may mahalagang papel sa pagprotekta sa ating kalikasan.
Indigenous knowledge, documentation, and knowledge transfer. The recent gender outlook in Asia, for instance, recognized the remarkable process on gender equality and poverty reduction. However, it also identified the need to further improve gender data.
Kailangan natin talagang mas
Desegregation and for achievement and gain to trickle down and reach more vulnerable groups of women. An inclusive food system need to provide
pangkalahataang sistema ng pagkain ang makakapagbigay ng ligtas na espasyo para sa mga IPLC. Kailangan talaga mas magkaroon ng mas malawak na kaalaman tungkol sa pagkain.
That can help in protecting its advocates and the important works that they do. An inclusive food system must recognize
pangkalahatang sistema ng pagkain kailangan mas
nature-based model and governance mechanism that advocates indigenous and traditional knowledge in forest management
para
and
mas
strengthen the role of women and youths.
Kailangan mas mapalakas pa ang papel ng kababaihan at kabataan. Pagdating sa usaping ito, kailangan mas maging maayos sa pamamahala ng lupain.
The traditional shifting cultivation among many others. And finally, an inclusive food system must support sustainable climate.
Kailangan masuportuhan ang
facilitate capacity building and strengthening with ample
pagpapalakas ng
financial and technical support to IPLC, especially the women and the youths. So we welcome the work of Wild Food, Biodiversity and Livelihood Network in Asia that can provide and serve as another important safe platform to synthesize.
Magiging mahalagang plataforma ito, ligtas na plataforma.
A relevant network that can also add value, strength, and support to existing platform where in amplifying key message and raising awareness.
Para mas mapalakas pa ang mensaheng gustong nais iparating nito.
Healthy forest, healthy people.
Kailangan talaga kasi bigyang halaga na maging malusog ang ating mga kagubatan.
Thank you and good day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. That actually sums up our opening session. I think that was beautifully closed by and summarized, synthesized by Gordon. I think the key messages are there. We have run out of time, and I thank everyone who has stayed until now, even a half an hour
Para
late.
sa lahat po ng mga dumalo sa talakayang ito, ililipat na po namin kayo sa panelist panel para sa ating group photo. Mangyari lamang po ay maging handa po tayo para sa ating group photo. Maraming salamat po.
Of discussions that are to happen and are invited in the next few days. So the messages here,
yung mga mensaheng pinarating dito ay mas bibigyang linaw palalo sa mga susunod pang araw ng talakayan.
Food systems to 2030. These will be further elaborated in more
Ito po ay
discussion.
mas bibigyang linaw sa mga susunod na araw. Ayoko sanang paikliin
of the discussions, but just to leave off with a note of the point that Nonet said about protecting the integrity of the forest and protecting the integrity.
Dapat talaga nating maproteksyonan ang integridad ng mga kagubatan.
And that means, as Madhu said, we give back. We give back to the people.
Kailangan ay magbigay tayo ulit sa mga tao pagdating sa mga teritoryo at kagubatan natin.
About wild foods, biodiversity, and their own customary livelihoods. I think that's the essence here, and how
Yun
we
naman po
can
talaga ang mahalaga dito. Yun ang esensya ng talakayang
achieve
ito.
that as part of a future reality that we hope that we can see until up to 2030. So thank you very much.
Maraming salamat po. Isa pa pong paalala, alam ko marami pong katanungan na nilagay ang ating mga tagalahok.
Thank you also for the affirmation of the good messages. But as far as the questions are concerned, we will make sure that these are answered. And this is also
Sasagutin po namin ang mga tanong sa pamamagitan ng aming website na wildfoodsasia.com dahil doon po namin ilalagay ang mga update at mga sasagutan sa inyong mga tanong.
all questions that have been posed with a recap of the answers or responses from the speakers or from the organizers. So thank you, and I will now give back to Diana. There's also a poll that you will see on the screen. Please submit them. Just answer the poll, and I'll turn you over to Diana now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Femi, and thank you
Maraming
everyone
salamat.
for staying on. Just a few announcements
Bago,
before we all
meron lang konting mga paalala.
class picture. So I quickly want to advertise the side events and the main events that
Gusto
we
ko
have
lang ipahagi sa inyo mga mangyari bukas. Kaya bukas 10:30 meron tayong event
in Asia where we
tungkol sa pagluluto. So magkakaroon tayo ng mga speaker na pag-uusapan ng mga iba't ibang kwento tungkol sa mga iba't ibang lutuin.
you can all join us for this session. The next session for
At
tomorrow
sa hapon, pag-uusapan naman natin ang estado ng mga pagkaing ligaw sa Timog at Timog Silangang Asya.
of country situation papers on the state of wild foods
So
in South
magkakaroon po ng presentasyon ng iba't ibang papel
as well, 3 to 5 p.m.
at
Manila time. If you
at
haven't read
magkakaroon po ng interpresyon. Pwede po kayong magpatala sa wildfoodsasia.com para makadalo sa ating talakayan bukas. Bago po tayo umalis, bago po tayo magtapos,
all of the events if possible because we have a lot of exciting side events and main events up
sana
until
po ay
Friday.
dumalo pa kayo sa ibang ibang mga events.
Christina has all moved you to the main room. May we request
Mangyari lamang po ay maghanda kayo para sa isang larawan. Pakibuksan na lang po ang inyong mga camera para tayo ay makakuha ng larawan.
for this afternoon. So let's
Humanda po tayo.
open their camera and go to gallery view.
Pakibuksan na lamang po ang inyong mga camera para tayo ay makakuha ng maayos na larawan.
You're free to smile or do your own.
Pwede ho kayong ngumiti.
And we will also put this up on the Wild Foods Asia website.
Ilalagay po namin ang larawan na to sa wildfoodsasia.com website.
Take a picture of the group page by page. Christina, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Diana. All right, I will be taking a group photo. So everybody, if you would like to turn on your cameras very quickly, we have 3 pages.
Mana
So we'll
kamuran?
take a couple shots. So hold your poses for a while. I'll take the first one now. 1, 2, 3, smile. The next one. 1, 2, just give me a second. All right, 1, 2, 3, smile. 1, 2, 3, smile. All right.
Okay, so I think that's a wrap, and you'll get the pictures. We'll post
Makikita nyo po ang larawan sa website po namin.
for everyone, along with the recordings. We'll try our best to put in.
Pati po ang mga recordings ay ilalagay namin
So thank you.
sa aming website. Maraming salamat po at kinagagalak namin kayong makita. Paalam!
Bye.
Maraming salamat. Bye-bye.
Paalam!
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.